Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning. Welcome to the show. Great to hear from you, see you, and have you join us here at Talk, the home of common sense. It's just coming up to 3 minutes past 10 o'clock on another sort of rather dreary Monday morning in December. Lots to talk about today. I'm with you all the way until 1, and whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device, thank you very much, as I say, for being with us. If you do miss anything from the show, you missed anything from last week, want to go back to it, you can check out my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. If you could all just subscribe, then I can stop yapping on about that. There's an awful lot to yap on about today, though. Goodness me, where do we even start? Coming up in this hour, we're going to talk about the former Royal Marine, Jamie Michael. He's been banned from working with children, including his own daughter's football team that he's been coaching, after he protested against illegal migrants back in, way past, all back into Southport days on Facebook. 47-year-old dad of 2 was charged with inciting racial hatred after he described some migrants as scumbags. I mean, yep, some migrants and some British people as scumbags, I think we can safely say, in a video posted on Facebook during the Southport riots. A jury cleared him after just 17 minutes. There's the giveaway. But his local safeguarding board ruled that he is not suitable to work with youngsters and could therefore no longer coach his daughter's local football team. Free speech campaigners warn that safeguarding concerns are increasingly being deployed to silence people with patriotic views in what they call a scandalous abuse of the system. Well, we'll be talking to one of those free speech campaigners, Lord Young, founder of the Free Speech Union, a little bit later in the show. Also, every employer in Britain is going to be required to hand their staff pro-union messaging under Labour's Employment Rights Bill to stop hostile employers discouraging membership. Also, we are seeing really blatant attempts to oust Keir Starmer from the think tank that backed him, Labour Together. They are openly now polling Labour Party members, going, who do you think would be the right candidate to replace Keir Starmer and win an election? Yeah, we may be a bit unhappy with Keir Starmer. Very unhappy with Keir Starmer. Imagine how much worse it could be, because judging by those polls, an awful lot. Plus, we are going to be talking about migrants being granted asylum without face-to-face interviews as the Home Office tries to clear a backlog of claims. When we wanted you to clear the backlog of claims, Home Office, we didn't mean just literally allowing everyone to stay. No wonder the US has issued a document over the last 24 hours, the National Security Strategy, warning, frankly, that we are in a very, very big mess, facing civilizational, basically, destruction if we carry on as we are. We're going to talk about all of that. Plenty more besides to talk about. I mean, so much to get through today. And delighted to say, joining me today is commentator Sam Armstrong. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
So much. I mean, just so much to talk about today. We're going to, I mean, I want to actually, I'll put the number out for you guys because I'd love you to get in touch. I'm sure you do want to. I know you've been calling in to Jez's show this morning about this, but the ex-Royal Marine. So, you know, he writes a Facebook post in the middle of the Southport riots, at the time when everyone did think that it was an illegal migrant, a migrant who had committed those awful crimes at Southport, leaving 3 children dead, 8 life-changing injuries, 8 children and 2 adults as well. And he wrote something, but he wasn't even trying. I mean, literally, he was absolutely categoric in talking about peaceful protest. Write to your councillor, write to your MP, you know, organise meetings. I mean, he actually was blatant, open about that. But he basically got acquitted after 17 minutes. He's now been banned from working with children. I mean, including his own daughter's kids' football team, because basically, oh well, you know, could be a risk. I mean, he was charged with hate speech. He got acquitted. He's still not allowed to work with children. He's now suing the local so-called safeguarding board for 25 grand. What is your reaction to that? Well, the number to call is 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost 1, standard network rate message. Sam, you do a lot of work with the Free Speech Union as well. I mean, that case brought against Jamie Michael was bad enough, given the Facebook post. It wasn't a he said, she said. I mean, it was there in black and white. We know what he wrote. But the fact that he's being stopped from doing this wonderful volunteer work that he does with actually 2 different football teams is outrageous.
Yeah, Jamie's a mate of mine. Let me tell you a little bit about him. He grew up in the Pennycraig, the same part of South Wales that he still lives in. He was a brilliant footballer. He got called up to join the Manchester United kids team. He played for Wales as a 14, 15 and 16-year-old and went off to play professional football, including playing for Cardiff for a little while. His career fizzled out with a couple of injuries, and he joined the Royal Marines, and while there he served his country with enormous distinction. And having sat opposite him and heard him tell me about what he saw in Iraq, I can only imagine. And what has his country given him in response to that?
Exactly.
It has taken the fact that he coaches his daughter's football team out of his spare time so that he can encourage his daughter to play football, like a lot of dads, and it has used it as a weapon against him. Yep. And one element I think of this is really important, which is, and I'm sorry to make it political, but I think it is political. When he posted that video in the aftermath of Southport, did very well.
Yeah, sorry, a video rather than a post, yeah.
It did very well locally because a lot of people know him. I've been to Pennycraig with him, and I can tell you, everybody there knows Jamie. And he was reported by whom? By a staffer working for the local Labour Assembly member.
Of course he was.
Buffy Williams, the Assembly member there. She reported him to the police.
Buffy?
Buffy. She's
there you
called
go.
Buffy.
Case closed.
She reported him to the police. As a result, they came around to his office where he works as a sports massage person, and they arrested him. 4 officers came and arrested him, banged him up for 20 days on remand in prison, and then at the end of it...
But thank God he said, no, I'm not pleading guilty other people who forced it.
Got a Free Speech Union lawyer. Free Speech Union lawyer took it to a jury, got him off in 17 minutes, unanimously, by a decision of a Merthyr Tydfil jury trial. Can we tell why they're trying to scrap juries yet? What happens at the end of it? His Labour local authority turns around and says, you are a danger to kids. The 2 worst things you can be called in this country are a danger to kids and a racist.
And he was accused of both, basically.
Labour have accused him of both because they think they're a threat. He's a threat to them in the South Wales valleys, where every single poll tells you in May next year, reform are coming
But this is it. I mean, look, it was a 12-minute video, just so people know, because again, this is what happened. I apologise to Lucy Connolly last week because, I believed a lot of the reports. Again, we know the CPS said, the police had lied about what she had written and other posts she'd written. Charged with inciting racial hatred, he described some migrants, not all migrants, some migrants, as scumbags and psychopaths. It's a 12-minute video, but he also was very clear. He wrote, so he said in the video, and he's got 2 young daughters. Again, you've got a load of girls have just been stabbed. Some have died, and you've got 2 young daughters. As you know, this affects you more. He's looked very upset in the video, and he urged people to get ready. And he said, "It doesn't mean getting bats and knives and stuff. I'm talking about doing things the right way, getting in big groups, having meetings, going to the council, police, the politicians, and the councillors." I mean, he's literally urging people to take part in a democratic process to protest against a risk to our country. I mean, seriously, it's no wonder a jury taking 17 minutes. Is a jury literally getting in, having a cup of tea, having a vote, and then going, "Thank you very much." That's how quick that is. There was not even, they didn't even bother having a conversation because they didn't need to, because it was so obvious. And this is the thing. Again and again and again, we've seen this. We've seen this with, UKIP supporters, Brexit supporters, not being allowed to foster, not being allowed to adopt because they're considered unsuitable. Now, this is just obscene. This is so wrong. And this is kind of, social engineering. And as the Free Speech Union said, I'm going to declare an interest. I'm a member. I don't get paid by them or anything. I'm a member of the union. I think everyone's crazy who speaks in the public eye who isn't. If you're on social media, you need to be a member of the Free Speech Union, as far as I'm concerned. But they, it's this idea that actually the process is the punishment. Yep. So we're going to see, well, he got arrested, or he got charged, or I could win, but I'll probably lose my job, and people will be looking at me and pointing fingers at me, so it's not worth the risk. And it does silence people.
Everybody knows, because everyone has done it. They just think it's not worth it. It's not worth speaking up at work when there's nonsense going on. It's not worth going on social media. Yep. It's not worth standing up to this government, because I don't think this is happening in isolation. No. What we see is a Labour government that was elected. We've said many times.
This happened under the Tories as well.
Well, but the following things did not happen under the Tories. And by the way, actually, the Free Speech Union, as we say in the articles, had 15 of these cases, none before 2024.
Okay, that's interesting.
So this is all a post-Southport phenomenon, actually. And I think this is a Labour thing, because what we see is the following. We have a Labour government that has said it is going to delay and defer elections to 2028. It has said that it is going to refer people as paedophiles. It is going to go and arrest people. It is going to scrap jury trials. It is going to clamp down further and further and further on online speech through the Online Safety Acts and fine platforms potentially billions of dollars if they don't shut people up. And what I see is going to change the vote to allow 16s and 17-year-olds to vote. What I see is the most unpopular Prime Minister in history, determined to use every single lever available to him to shut us up, to shut us out, and to shut down dissent towards him.
And to cling on to power.
This is a very quiet, a very British, but very real coup going on before our eyes.
That is a very interesting point. I wrote a piece for The Sun at the end of last week after the jury trials and the cancelling of those. I mean, you're delaying election for 2 years, 3 years in total. These mayoral elections in basically the entire home counties, the whole of the south east. I think some people are saying it's 5 million votes. I understand it's 7 million voters who are actually affected. And genuinely, this is about utter contempt and disdain for people. And this goes into the whole, let's go back in the EU, let the bureaucrats decide. Let's let the judges, not the juries, decide. Let's just not even bother with these elections. We'll just, let the bureaucrats decide everything. Every quango, everybody like that. That's what they want, to decide everything. And it is very, very obvious what's going on. What do you make? And this sort of ties in with this, because this gentleman's concern, Jamie Michael, was about. And Jamie, by the way, we did hope to have him on the show today. If you were available, we would love to talk to you on the show. But this US document, America has just released its latest national security strategy. And basically, it says, in these exact words, that Europe is facing civilizational erasure. That the governance that we've got at the moment by out-of-touch elites, the mass uncontrolled immigration, both legal and illegal, and the complete and utter just sort of absolute trashing of European civilization's culture and values. This whole sort of, these idiots on the left who sort of go, all cultures are equal. No, they're not. No, they're not, because we're not en masse trying to move to the Middle East. OK, Dubai, that's because people can live as if they live in the West. People aren't moving en masse to Pakistan or to China or to Nigeria. No, they're not. People are coming en masse to Europe and to other Western civilizations. Why? Because they are better cultures to live in, full stop. But the point is, they won't be for very long if you have a level of immigration, and we've seen the falling birth rates among the, let's use the term, native population, the indigenous population, as opposed to immigrant population. Virtually the entire increase in population in this country, and it has been huge, has been the arrival of immigrants and immigrants' children rather than the indigenous population. And people coming particularly from very different cultures with very different values, yes, different religions, just different belief systems, that is basically eroding our civilization. I mean, there's an element where you think, I don't want the Americans telling us what to do. But when when you're a friend and you're calling it out, we criticise America, we have our opinions on, Trump or Kamala or Trump or Clinton or Trump or Biden. They're allowed to say it when it affects their national security, because they're saying we may not be a reliable security partner in the future. And given that we've already got, 5 MPs for Gaza, if you think you represent Gaza rather than Bradford or somewhere in Britain, you are not going to be a reliable security partner to our allies, are you?
Britain, France, Germany, many other European countries whose civilizations have stood for 1,000 years will not exist in any recognisable form within my lifetime, unless something very, very, very dramatic happens. We saw there was a piece in the Telegraph over the weekend that said, who's the chief beneficiary of Labour lifting the 2-child cap on benefits? Well, let's just say the areas, the constituencies where the biggest benefit is likely to be found: Bradford, Bolton, Birmingham, inner city Manchester. What we are seeing is a very, very determined effort to essentially say that the entirety of Western civilization is problematic and should shut up. And meanwhile, we should allow mass migration to permanently and fundamentally alter the realities of our societies. J.D. Vance, Donald Trump are right when they say, to an extent, and this is by no means universal, but to an extent, the enemy is within. The people that will change this country in the next 50 to 60 years to take a foreign policy which is very much antithetical to the United States and to the one that we've had for a very long time, are here already. They are now sitting in our parliaments. Do you honestly think that those 5 Gazan MPs are just going to stay 5 Gazan MPs? No. They're going to grow. And when they do...
And also, it's sectarian voting. It's people voting for someone because they share their religion or their heritage background.
No, it's not.
That's not healthy. That's not healthy. I don't vote for someone because of their religion.
It's because they share their... and I'm sorry to put it this highly, it's because they share their prejudice. The vast majority of their voters are motivated by a bizarre, racist, just call it what it is, racist hatred of Israel and Jews. And they want to vote for MPs that represent their racist views towards Israel and Jews. Now, look, they may well disagree, and that's just my opinion, but...
They think they're pro-Palestine, but the evidence suggests very differently.
The evidence suggests very different. And when they grow, and when the Labour Party in 10, 15, 20 years' time needs their votes, those MPs' votes, to form a majority, they are going to sit in the cabinet of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. They are going to be partly responsible for who gets to press the big red nuclear missile. And if we had a working deterrent, which it sounds like we don't have, it would be a very real threat to the US. So is it any surprise that our closest ally in the world is putting it in their national security strategy as one of the big mega threats that a nuclear arms state on their doorstep
it's not.
might be taken over?
They're calling it like it is. And again, it's important that they do, because we do need to have these conversations without everyone getting all squeamish. And, you know, again, for me, it's about culture more than anything else. But again, it's just like, what do you think is British people? If you talk about this on social media, people go, oh, what do you mean by British values? Wait, you don't know. You don't know what British values are. I know what British values are.
Yeah, and do you know what? It's more than just multiculturalism and diversity.
Also, anyone who says diversity is our strength, there's no evidence whatsoever that diversity is any country's strength. And people talk about, oh, well, America is a melting pot. No. People don't arrive and go, I'm going to set up my own culture and speak my own language and have my own sort of allegiances in America. No. You become an Italian American. You become an Arab American. Asian American, and you put your hand over your heart when the flag is raised and you sing the national anthem and you ascribe to those values. That's a very different... It's about come here from wherever you come from, but you join this culture. It's a very different thing from what Europe's done. And Britain, France and Germany have made a terrible job of this, which is come over here, bring your culture, bring your values, carry on. You can have your Sharia courts, you can do all this, that we can all make a little bit of a fuss about FGM. And they go and then they talk to daughters, kids in school, like my daughter and her friends, about FGM. Yeah, not a risk. Not a risk among our friends. Why don't you tackle the people who it's a risk among? And then they pretend that we need to tackle the outliers. No, these aren't outliers. This is a culture that, you're bringing in cultures from a number of different countries, from a number of different parts of the world, which are totally alien. And look, there are people who, again, there are plenty of people who've come from those countries in the past who have come here to make a life here in the West for freedom and economic benefit, and who have completely settled here and are making a great contribution. Often, interestingly, it is their children. Yeah. And we've seen this actually, and again, and no one sensible is saying, second generation, everyone's a terrorist, or everyone, not saying anything remotely like that, just before the idiots try and say I am. But in the cases where we have seen Islamist terrorism, which is the single biggest threat to people's safety in this country, in terms, it's not the far right. It is largely either immigrants or the children of immigrants who often feel they're caught between two different cultures and they haven't felt assimilated. We need to deal with that, and you can't deal with it when you bring in another 2 million people every year.
Yeah, I can't actually put it any better. I was in Washington, D.C. in America being driven by a Pakistani American, and he was very keen to point this out, Pakistani American cab driver, and he said to me, I don't understand what's going on in Britain. You have millions of people coming over from Pakistan and attempting to recreate Pakistan in Britain.
Why don't you stay in Pakistan?
As he said, I left Pakistan because I didn't want to live in a Muslim country, because it was a basket case, because it was being run really badly. So I came to live in what he described in America as a Christian country. Broadly, it applies Judeo-Christian values, as our country certainly did. And you know, his view was he just couldn't understand it, and this is absolutely right.
Just nailed it.
I don't want Pakistani politics in British politics. Look at the results there. Look at how many people, frankly, have a basic functioning life with, you know, proper hygiene and all the rest of it, proper economy, proper functioning industry.
I think you'll find that's British colonialism's fault. I'm sure you got that memo, no?
Well, I do know that, obviously, I'm now totally unsuitable to work with children. And
I mean, I think we all agreed that already, didn't we?
I must immediately be brought up by a state-sanctioned judge to determine whether or not I'm a hate criminal.
Yeah, I'm also unsuitable to work with children because I think the children should do as they're told, which apparently makes you a Nazi now anyway. But anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on all this. I think honestly, this national security strategy for America is really, really significant. I like it when people point out it's a big red neon flashing sign, and we all know it, and everyone gets all anxious about talking about it. Gotta talk about it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. 0344 499 1000. One person who does talk about a lot of this stuff is Nigel Farage. Doesn't actually go as far as I think a lot of people would like. There's all these fallings out over the years with various people. But he's now, I mean, not only have we got all those childhood racism claims and the playground stuff. Now, I'm sorry, I'm of the view that Nigel Farage was probably a nasty little piece of work when he was at his boys' public school back in the 70s and 80s. I think a lot of people were. I think that was probably the norm at boys' public schools. I don't think I would have liked Nigel Farage very much when he was at school, but I know certainly in the adulthood, I've known him for, about 30 years. I have never heard him, genuinely never heard him say anything even close to being racist. If I thought he had, I would have said it. I would have spoken out about it. I really, really would have. But he's now been reported to the police over election fraud, over election expenses in Clacton, the last general election. Now, it's outside the normal one-year statute of limitations. It's a report from Richard Everett. He's a former Reform councillor. He was a member of the campaign team that won him his seat. But he's also someone who basically was thrown out of the party. The Reform spokesman claimed he was expelled from Reform in August for allegedly sexually inappropriate behaviour in the party's Clacton office. Those claims are denied, I must stress. But it does look like a disgruntled former employee has basically decided to sort of throw Nigel Farage under the bus. Now, I don't know whether the election expenses were to the letter or not. I think an awful lot of election expenses in this country aren't to the letter. It's 20 grand for the local constituency campaign, which is virtually nothing. And then was it 20 million for the national campaign? I think we've got a massive problem with election spending and election funding in this country. We need to get to the bottom of that. But it does seem to me we're just getting one thing after another thrown at Nigel Farage. Why? Because he's ahead in the polls. And that's why it's happening. Who are we kidding? Yeah,
there is a concerted, organised attempt to denigrate, to discredit and to destabilise Nigel Farage being launched. And I don't normally talk in these terms, but I would say it quite clearly, by the establishment. That is who is...
Aren't you part of the establishment?
Well, if I am, they've never told me so.
Can I get a membership card? Is it laminated?
It certainly hasn't felt like it at times. But look, there are every single day newspaper journalists that are being put on to get Nigel campaigns. And the big question is, will it stick? Or have the British public perhaps had enough of these kind of stories, had enough of all of a sudden someone's doing very well, threatening the established order of things, and, you know, I do
want people to play by the book. I'm not entirely sure that everyone who's come up against Nigel Farage, I mean, 7 seats that he fought and lost, that they played by the book. I don't think any political party plays completely by the book on these things. I don't think they've done. There have been plenty of cases where it's been some very clear question marks about the campaigns against Nigel Farage and everything but the kitchen sink thrown at him. It is important that everyone does.
Well, yes. On the other hand, why now?
Yeah.
Why this guy? Why has this story made its way to the front page of national newspapers all at the same time? And why are there every day somebody different from Dulwich Dulwich Boys School,
I know.
turning out with a slightly different story.
Those allegations from, and we're going to talk to Michael Crick, who originally wrote a book, and actually that's what brought this to everyone's notice a few years ago. But actually, I mean, some of these first allegations emerged back in 2013, so before Brexit campaigning, when Nigel Farage was sort of big in the UKIP campaign. So these allegations have been made for quite a long time. And there are enough people making these allegations that a lot of people might go, no smoke without fire. Again, as I say, I think that he probably said some pretty nice things, but the point that he made on Friday, which is a very powerful press conference at the BBC, is like, this is at a time when you were showing, 8.5 Hot Mum and goodness knows what, and the black and white minstrel show and things. It was a very, very different time. People said things that people are utterly and quite rightly shocked by now. And I would think that shows, haven't we come a long way as a country? Isn't that a good thing? I mean, I don't want to get PC, I'm not into PC, but yeah, I would much rather that it wasn't acceptable for people to shout racist slurs at people in the playground, for goodness sake.
Julia, I am not a member of the Reform Party. I didn't vote Reform at the last election. I am a member of a different political party. However, this country faces a toxic combination of permanently low growth, a government that is collapsing all around us, the biggest security challenges we've faced, certainly in my lifetime, definitely the last couple of generations, mass migration that is out of control, and a British public that are angrier than ever before. And I don't care in the least the kinds of songs that were being sung in a Dulwich school playground in 1970. And I do not think that millions of people out there in the country think that they care in the least either. And they look at these stories, they listen to people yabbering on about them all day, personalities this, school playground stuff this. It is irrelevant and it gets them angry because this country needs solutions. And what does the establishment offer? The same tired menu of little sleaze that they've dug up from goodness knows when.
And you just know, you can see these sort of Lib Dems and Labour people go, oh, we've got him now. Well, good luck with that. You keep thinking that, but just look at the polls. So much I want to hear from you about. Do get in touch. Love to hear your thoughts on all of that as well. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. Lots of messages coming in as well about that former Royal Marine Jamie Michael banned from working with children after he protested against illegal migrants in a Facebook video. That's all he did. He was acquitted by the court of any race hate crime, and yet he has been told he cannot work with kids. Danger to children. Are you kidding me? I'd love to hear your thoughts about this. This is just about shutting up people who, well, basically are considered to be on the right. Of course, we're all far right now. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. Julia Hartley-Brewer. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Let's get your thoughts on, well, free speech, Farage, you name it, loads more to talk. I mean, literally can't even start on all the topics I want to talk about today or this Monday morning. Let's go to Carl, who's on the line in Liverpool. He's given us a call on 0344 499 1000, as you can at any time. Good morning to you, Carl. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Good morning.
So 2 points there. The first point on this, the Royal Marine, it's laughable, really. I mean, it mustn't have been for him at the time, being locked away for 20 days on remand.
That's scary.
It is, and do you know what? It's typical of this government and how us veterans are treated. To say that he's a risk to children, his own daughter's football team, etc., is just beyond. I don't know how these people can say and do these things. And for that Labour MP that reported him, she should be sacked.
Yep.
She should be sacked for what she's done, because that man didn't do a thing wrong. He aired a view like most of us, and we're not right-wing, we're just right.
I've always said this.
Simple.
And again, what counts as right-wing, again, like thinking we shouldn't have open borders and we shouldn't allow people who arrive here on boats illegally should be allowed to stay and be given, free passage, have a hotel, or that people who commit crime should go to prison. I mean, these are normal views of normal average people.
Yeah, they are, Julia. And 10, 20 years ago, if this was said, no one would have batted an eyelid.
No.
You are right. You are right. There is a threat. It's not. Just off topic before I mention my other point. You had the BBC air that episode of Question Time with that illegal immigrant.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that later. Yeah.
Now, if Reform was in government at that time, and it was mainly Reform on the panel, etc., Reform would have been blasted for that, not the BBC. They would have turned on Reform, because they'd have gone, well, they've bust someone in to have a say on their behalf. But because it's Labour, it's, you're all far right. No, we're right, because we are seeing it right in front of our faces, and he's looking at some sort of device to read off.
Yeah, but also, I mean, the idea that this sort of illegal migrant who's now got refugee status, he's going, your Question Time, very big, well-known BBC show, I think I'll go on there. I mean, what a load of abject nonsense. He was clearly drafted in. I mean, it's so outrageous.
It is outrageous, but moving on to my next point.
Very quickly,
Nigel Farage. Do you know what, Julia? I've said for quite a while now, I worry about this gentleman, because he is our only hope at some sort of normality and within the politics arena.
And they're throwing everything at him.
Everything at him, Julia, everything. And I worry for his safety, as in, we have that many nutters, Islamic nutters, lefty loons, and he said before that he's being threatened and stuff, but I actually really worry about him.
He has to have a lot of security. I couldn't agree with you more, Carl. I think that's a massive issue in terms of security. And again, but I would feel that with any politician, the fact that for many years he had years of threats and he wasn't given proper security. I mean, God, Prince Harry can sod off when he worries about his. I would think that Nigel Farage is having a much worse time. I'm going to have to leave it there. I'm going to go to a quick break. I know Phil in Hertfordshire, you've been waiting on the line. I promise I'll come to you the next hour. I 100% promised you. Up next, we're going to be talking to former Labour Party spokesman, very much not Labour anymore, James Mathewson, about where we are and all of this. This is Talk, the home of common sense.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Morning, welcome back to the show. 10:38 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer here on Talk. Sam Armstrong's still with me. Also joining us now is James Mathewson. He's a commentator, a former Labour Party spokesman. I do always feel the need, James, to stress you are very much no longer a supporter of the Labour Party anymore because you think they're far too right-wing, don't you?
Well, I mean that's a simplification, Julia.
But yes, that was I think, but a fair view. Yeah. Just so everyone's clear where we are.
I'm not happy with Keir Starmer's leadership.
No, it doesn't sound like anyone is, to be fair, other than Keir Starmer. Thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate that. What do you make of this story about this man, a former Royal Marine, Jamie Michael, being banned from working with children because of a Facebook post about illegal migrants back after Southport? He was acquitted by a jury over rape or hate crime allegations within 17 minutes. Still not allowed to coach his daughter's football team because of so-called safeguarding concerns. Is this just, as the Telegraph headline says today, right-wingers branded a danger to children?
No, I don't think it's that simple. I think everyone should be vetted and checked, and I think the process this is at is very much at that stage. So I don't think it's...
Well, no, nothing's happened other than the Facebook post.
To do in the future. No, I know, but that's it. But the Facebook post, unfortunately, gives a bit of an insight into the man's views and his personality. And
well, he was... But he can have a... He can have whatever views and personality he wants. He hasn't committed a crime. He was OK to coach the team before. Why is he not OK to coach the team now?
Because it's not just about criminal offences, Julia, as to whether you work with kids or not. It's about general conduct. Like, we wouldn't let a teacher get away with doing that. So you can't
get away with doing what? Because there was no race element to it. He said that some migrants are scumbags. Well, yeah, I mean some of all groups of people are scumbags.
But for example, if a migrant child, if a child of a migrant or a child of an asylum seeker was to be on that squad, was to be on that thing, would they feel comfortable with that? How was he going to treat them?
Well, I couldn't imagine he'd treat them any differently to how he'd treat any other child. Would there be any evidence?
When he says some of them are scum. When he says some of them are scum.
Well, yeah, because I mean, some. As we can see from some of the criminal record statistics, some are scum in the same way some British people are scum, but that's not an argument to import new ones.
Yeah, but it's about whether how you voice that and how you conduct yourself online. It's just general online stuff. Like, I mean, you see it now, right, where people saying, "Oh, you get locked up in Britain for tweets and all the rest." It's nonsense. You don't. No, you don't. You get locked up if you incite hatred, Julia. You know that. You know there's a difference, and I know you've told Lucy Connolly how you feel about her and all the rest of it, but you're wrong.
I don't like. I mean, I've made it very clear. I don't think she should be sanctified, and I don't think she's a saint. I didn't like her post at all. You don't think she should have been in prison
for committing a crime?
Well, because I don't believe she would have been convicted of committing a crime if she'd gone to a jury.
Interesting, yeah. But I mean, the thing is, I think with this generally, when conduct comes up, it doesn't have to be criminal, I think there's just this thing, and I think some of your Talk TV viewers, by the way, I'll talk to them directly now if that's all right with you. I will say you lot need to learn, because I get emails, I get messages when I've come on here, and they're not nice.
Well, listen, genuinely, James. Well, also, you've got to remember lots of those will be things that's gone out on social media. If you get any abuse, you get anything that is abusive, I would like you, genuine. I've always this, but you send them to me, and I will sort that out for you, because that's totally unacceptable for anyone to abuse anyone or any of my guests. But I genuinely, if you get anything like that, I want to know about it.
I appreciate that, thank you. But it does kind of link back to this in the way that we should just conduct ourselves in a better manner.
Can I just say, by the way, I go on last time I was, long time ago, Question Time, or I go anything like that. The abuse. I mean, I'm called. Whenever I hear anyone on the left moaning about abuse, I'm always like, you should see my Twitter feed of a morning.
You get it,
Now, I mean, doesn't bother me because it's like I've got the skin of a rhino. But I mean, I think for a lesser soul, it would be very distressing. And so the left are, I would say, equally as bad.
Well, I would say people are generally across the board. I don't think it matters about your politics. I think people are
just some nasty, scary people out there living in their mum's basements. That's all.
In a way that's completely inappropriate. Because the internet gives people anonymity and it makes them feel empowered.
Oh no, they do it even without anonymity. But seriously, honestly, anyone, seriously, if you're sending abuse to one of my guests, stop watching videos, don't listen to this show. I don't want you. You're not welcome here, because that's not how we do debate here. Look, let's talk about Labour Party right now, because we've got staff being encouraged to join unions under the new employment bill. I've got to be honest, basically, employers are going to be required to say you're entitled to join a union and give them information that's going to be written by the government. I have to say, I haven't got a problem with this. It seems to me that people should know. We know there are some great employers out there. There are also some bloody awful ones.
Yeah, it just safeguards against the awful ones. You know, that's all it does. Like, there is no negative. I mean, people will go back to, like, whether it be the 70s or whatever, and, you know, trade union barons and the miners' strike and things being held up and collective activism going too far. People will always quote that stuff. But at the end of the day, collective bargaining as a general principle has gotten us every single right that we have today as a society. So I think it's a good thing to make sure that people know, because so many young people now, by the way, they haven't got a clue what a union is. They don't know.
No, but also you hear about, you know, people working in Amazon warehouses who are, you know, being timed when they go to the toilet and things like that. I mean, again, people, you know, that's the thing. I'm not anti-union. I am anti-militant unions who are just like taking the mick. What do you make of the Unite union? They're a very strong union, big Labour paymasters, and Sharon Graham, a big sort of, she's always on the telly, you know, giving commentary. Very, very critical of a lot of Labour policies. Basically, they want them to more employment rights. They want Starmer to go to the left more, do they not? And they're talking, you know, consulting about basically breaking their links with the Labour Party. How big a damage would that be for Keir Starmer?
Well, I've got to say first, I am biased because I was a member of Unite and I resigned from Unite over some of their behaviour, to be honest. I'm not a big fan of them as a union in general. But, you know, I understand they are an activist union. They're a political union. They have a political headquarters and they spend a lot of their members' money on political activity. Look, that's their choice. That's what they do. But unfortunately, I just think they've got so tribal with their alliances. Sharon Graham was a big supporter of Jeremy Corbyn. She was never going to forgive Keir Starmer. You have to remember who the former leader of Unite was, in Len McCluskey. Again, I, as many others on the left, won't say too much about Len because, you know, he's very litigious in his approach to things. But you know, I think in general you have to remember that there are these deep divisions in the Labour and the trade union movement, whereby there's just tribes because there's tribes for the sake of it. It's the factionalism that I hate because it's completely pointless. But if Unite decides to pull its members' money away from the Labour Party, if I was a member of Unite, I'd be saying to them, well, what's the point in me giving you the money? Because I thought you were meant to be influencing MPs to help change legislation to be in favour for workers' rights. If they no longer have that power and they're influencing, like, what? The Socialist Campaign Group of like 6 MPs, then what's the point?
Very interesting. Well, I mean, talk about who is influential. A very influential think tank, Labour Together, used to be run by Morgan McSweeney, now the Chief of Staff to the Prime Minister, and basically backed Keir Starmer for the Labour leadership. They're rather blatantly looking for someone to take over from him. They've sent a survey out to the Labour Party members and to local Labour parties, prompting members to name the politicians they think who stood the best chance of leading Labour to electoral victory at the next general election compared with Starmer, and ranking who they'd be likely to vote for in a leadership election. They're naming the likes of Wes Streeting, Shabana Mahmood, Bridget Phillipson, Edmund Miliband, Darren Jones, Shabana Mahmood. Naming her twice there. And it's quite interesting. They're sort of rather blatantly saying, right, Keir Starmer, we don't reckon you're up to the job anymore. We're going to choose someone else. Who do you think they'll end up backing?
I think it kind of shows that where Keir Starmer is right now. You know, it shows that it's a given that he's not going to be the leader into the next election, which is fascinating because they used to say Labour Together. Morgan McSweeney, you know, that was his project. Yep. Morgan McSweeney's other project was Keir Starmer. You know, he genuinely created Keir Starmer as a leader and attached everything that he wanted to Keir Starmer. And we've seen it, how powerful Morgan McSweeney is, because he's the only person who hasn't been sacked or pushed out of Downing Street. He can't do any wrong. So it'll be interesting to see who they do name Labour Together, but it has changed the leadership of
But
Labour.
It is interesting because a lot on the right was saying someone like Wes Streeting or Shabana Mahmood, but you know, Wes Streeting's creeping up in the polls, but you know, the party want Angela Rayner or Ed Miliband. They want
The
people
party
on the
won't. The
left.
party won't back Wes Streeting. No, I mean, he's too much of a continuation of Starmerism.
Yeah.
It's very much a kind of blank slate that you can attach whatever you want
Yeah.
to. And look, the staffers and the kind of spads and the spin doctors, they love that because you can project what you want onto a blank slate. Whereas somebody with Angela Rayner, half of what you suggest to Angela is going to be thrown out. She's going to say, no, I'm not doing that. I'm doing it this way. That's what we need right now, by the way. Aside from political ideology, we need people who have conviction and who believe in themselves.
I like people who have conviction, as long as I think the politics they've got conviction to is actually a viable policy for the country. We'll have to leave it there. James Matthewson, former Labour Party spokesman, thank you very much. Sam Armstrong, listening to all of that, just a very quick reaction. Who do you think that the Labour Together will end up backing? Who will the Labour Party end up backing?
Well, I think the worst possible candidate is the answer. And I mean, if you think this country has got, too much woke, too much green, too much nonsense.
Careful what you wish for. Oh, I tell you what, it'd be funny. Ed
Miliband.
It would be funny, as I say, for the 2 weeks before societal collapse. But there we are. 10:49 is the time. Up next, we are going to be talking about migrants granted asylum without face-to-face interviews and plenty more with Danny Shaw. He's a Home Affairs commentator. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's go straight to my next guest now. He's Danny Shaw, Home Affairs commentator. And wow, a lot to talk to you about today, this morning, Danny. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Julia. Good to see you again.
First of all, I just want to touch on something that's happening right now. It started at 10:30. Kemi Badenoch and the Conservative Shadow Home Secretary Chris Philp, they're hosting a press conference alongside others, setting out their proposed terms of reference for a national inquiry into grooming gangs. The Tory leader has said the national inquiry into grooming gangs must leave no stone unturned and consider things like the role of ethnicity and religion in basically not just the targeting of young white girls by largely Pakistani heritage Muslim men, but also, crucially, the fact that that was one of the reasons why they were not investigated and stopped. But Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, has said 6 months have now passed. This is since the government said, basically dragged kicking and screaming to having a national inquiry. He says no progress has been made. Grooming gang survivors have lost confidence in the government. What do you make of this, basically this intervention, saying, look, this is what we think should happen because the government hasn't got their act together?
Well, I think they've got a point because it has been 6 months and no terms of reference, no chair for the inquiry. I mean, 6 months is a hell of a long time to sort of establish the basics, the framework for an inquiry, let alone for it to start. And so I think the Conservatives, I understand the political points that they're trying to score in this. I get that, but I think also they do have a point. I mean, this is too big a delay, and why hasn't the government got on with it? I think it was a big mistake when the government appointed Louise Casey to do this interim review. I think they should have kept her on to smooth over the process towards setting up the inquiry proper. I think that would have helped if they got her sort of to try and get that process underway, because she has so much support and respect from right across the political spectrum, as well as from survivors, that I think she would have been able to sort of speed up that process.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. But it is genuinely quite painful, isn't it, that it's taken so long and we're not getting any progress on that. Let me also ask you about where we are in terms of migration, because you and I've discussed this so many times, and again, we're told there's this massive backlog of people who've arrived here on the boats, in the lorries, the illegal migrants wanting to get asylum, and we're told actually the government's doing a really good job of actually clearing that backlog. They've really upped their game on that. The trouble is, a lot of people are very worried. They're doing it by basically waving people through. And now we know that a huge number of migrants are granted asylum without even a face-to-face interview, as the Home Office is basically trying to, fast-track the process. I mean, that cannot be safe.
Well, let's be clear that the process of having questionnaire-based assessments and then granting someone asylum or not based on the responses to a questionnaire was started by the Conservatives when they were trying to clear the backlog really quickly under Rishi Sunak. So this is not something that Labour has just suddenly taken on board.
No.
It was already underway under the previous administration. I think there are some countries which have historically very high grant rates of refugees, like Sudan, like Eritrea, for instance. The grant rates, in the 80%, 90% figures.
I've seen somewhere it's basically 99%. I mean, for some countries, like, turn up, say you're from South Sudan, off you go, and you're in.
Well, war-torn countries where people are clearly not safe to go back to and where they're fleeing persecution, if they can demonstrate that in a questionnaire by providing the documentation, because what this says very clearly is that they have to demonstrate they qualify with sufficient evidence. Now, if that process is rigorous, then I'd be prepared to accept that a questionnaire-based approach is
what sort of evidence
okay. I do have concerns, however, though.
Well, what sort of evidence would someone be able to present? Because as this article makes clear, their lawyers or someone else can obviously put this package together, but often they don't necessarily know whether someone is from somewhere. They go, oh well, I don't have proof that I'm from Somalia.
Well, then there would have to be an interview. There would have to be an interview in those circumstances, Julia. I mean, you can't accept someone's answers on a questionnaire at face value. If they can show identity documents that are valid, and obviously there are officials who are able to validate that, if they can do that, and that proves that they were in the country at a particular time, they're from a particular region that's been persecuted or having to flee war, then I think that's
But again, we know
acceptable.
that by definition they've come from France, a safe country. Many of these people have often, like the approved now, but arrived illegally migrant who was on question time. He'd applied from asylum status 5 times in 5 different countries in Europe and been rejected. Okay, great. Well, let's have you in. Why are they rejecting him, but we're accepting him? But also just the fact that there are millions of people fleeing a lot of these countries, and most of them are in neighbouring countries. Why do we think that these 24-year-old young men are the most deserving, or why do we think that they are uniquely? I mean, are all these young men being uniquely persecuted? I just find it a bit unlikely.
Well, the system we have is broken and is not perfect. And in an ideal world, you would have a system where you would agree to accept a figure every year of genuine refugees, and you would accept those who are most in need, and they would be invited to the UK, right? And then no one else would be allowed to come. That would be how the system should work, and you would have it controlled. We don't have that system. We have a system where people turn up on our shores by a small boat, or they come via a student visa or work visa, and then they claim asylum, or they come through on a lorry. They claim asylum, and once they're here, we have to look at their claim and assess their claim. That's how the system works at the moment. We do have this deal with France. I mean, we should have a deal with other European countries. I completely take your point with that guy on Question Time. I mean, why is he coming to the UK? He's gone to other safe countries. They've turned down his application. Really, we should be sending him back to those other countries.
Well, they're shopping. I mean, you know, they're migrant shopping, aren't they? Who's willing to take me?
When we were in the EU, we could send people back.
Oh, everyone, this is such a load of nonsense. We could, but we didn't.
Well, we did send some, but the point is the deal existed. It was there. We've got an agreement with France where we can do that. I know it's a very small number at the moment. But I absolutely take your point. Someone that's been rejected in all these safe countries, why are we accepting them? So I do think there is something.
But again, I know also there aren't other safe and legal routes, and that is an issue. However, these young men would still be coming because they probably wouldn't get in on the safe and legal routes. I just find, I mean, it's interesting. Also, Nick Timothy has also made a point about people who are arriving here legally, about the number of foreign-born families who are getting extra handouts. So even when people arrive here illegally, we're having a financial crisis on that front, quite apart from the billions spent on dealing with illegal migration. I mean, we never have enough time. We could spend all 3 hours on this topic, could we not? Danish, you're always great to talk to you. I know you know your potatoes on this. I'm going to get Sam Armstrong's thoughts on that and many other topics coming up in the next hour. We are going to be talking to Michael Crick. He wrote a biography of Nigel Farage. He concluded that he knew about the allegations about racism in the playground, but she concluded that he was not a racist. We're also going to talk to Lord Young, the founder of the Free Speech Union, about right-wingers basically branded unsafe to work with children simply for being right-wing. That's all coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's 2 minutes past 11 o'clock is the time. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or on your connected device. Thank you so much for your company. If you miss anything from the show, we're on all the way till 1 o'clock. If you've got a life work, I get it. Go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe and you never have to miss a thing. Coming up in this hour, we're going to talk more about that former Royal Marine, Jamie Michael. He's been banned from working with children after he protested against illegal migrants in a Facebook video back during the Southport riots. At the time, of course, that many people were under the view that it was an illegal migrant, illegal migrant who was responsible for those awful killings and stabbings of young children back in July 2024. The 47-year-old father of two did a Facebook video, but basically, he was charged with inciting racial hatred after he described some migrants as scumbags. Well, yeah, I think every group of people are scumbags, frankly. But a jury cleared him in just 17 minutes. Yet, his local so-called safeguarding board for children has ruled that he's not suitable to work with youngsters, so he can't coach his daughter's local football team anymore. He wants to clear his name and he's suing them for 25 grand, and good for him. We're going to talk to Lord Young, who's the founder of the Free Speech Union that's representing him, coming up very soon. Also going to be talking more about Nigel Farage. He's been reported to police by a former member of his own campaign team at Reform over claims of falsified election expenses at the election in July 24 for Clacton. Basically an overspend on leaflets, banners, utility bills and the refurbishment of a blue and teal Reform themed bar in their campaign office as well. Plus we're going to talk about Baroness Faulkner. She has just left as the head of the the Equalities and Human Rights Commission. She says that Labour has lost its way on trans guidance and has abandoned women's rights. Yeah, tell us something we don't know, Baroness. Lots more to talk about, plenty more to chat with about to my guest in the studio, commentator Sam Armstrong, who's still with us. Morning once again.
Good morning.
Now, we're asking people to get in touch about this ex-Royal Marine, and basically the headline on the story is right-wingers branded danger to children. That's what the Telegraph reckons, and it does feel that way, doesn't it? But lots of other stories as well in relation to this. Do give us a call and have your say. 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text cost one standard network rate message. A lot of you also getting in touch about the attacks on Nigel Farage from all sides, really. But Sam, let's just stick first of all with this former Royal Marine. And this is Jamie Michael, and you know him. You've been working with him. You do work with the Free Speech Union as well. Someone being branded a danger to children. This kind of goes back to Brexit campaigners, UKIP supporters being told you can't foster kids, you can't adopt children because of your political views. There is no doubt at all that in the establishment, in the woke lefty establishment across the board, there is this view that anyone who doesn't share their views on open borders, migration, legal and illegal, mass scale, absolutely all fine, and all cultures equal. I'd rather wave a EU flag than a Union flag, or a Pride flag than a Union or than an England flag. That if you don't sign up to that, you basically are going to be punished.
I don't for a minute believe that they actually think that this man is a danger to kids. I think this is a political weapon.
Never had a single complaint against him.
I think they are furious, literally livid, that the people of Merthyr Tydfil, who are not, I think, prime wokesters, have said no dice to their attempt to criminalise a man who has served his country with extraordinary gallantry. Look, if these people gave two hoots about kids, then they would have done something about the grooming gangs. They would have said, no, the safeguarding risk to these kids is the fact that they're getting picked up in working class communities by Pakistani taxi drivers in the middle of the night, ferried round places, plied with alcohol and repeatedly raped in the most extraordinary, disgusting way that this country has seen. And do you know what? They'd have also done something about the fact that we had confused autistic girls in particular in this country, got their bodies mutilated and poisoned with chemical castration drugs amongst other things for years and years and years in order to satiate a bizarre ideology that says that men can become women and women can become men. If they gave a monkeys, a flying flamingo about
So worried
kids,
where that was going.
about kids, they would have done something about that.
And
They don't.
They
I
don't.
tell you what they give something about. They give something about controlling us and shutting us up from calling them out on the damage that and destruction that they're wreaking on our
and it's
country.
interesting. Our guest earlier just saying, well, would you be concerned? What about if a migrant child was with this this man? But again, we had the same thing about Lucy Connolly, and then it emerged afterwards that she had numerous children of migrants, legal migrants in this case, or people of colour, and no issue whatsoever would have got those children. Those families all wrote wonderful recommendation letters and character references for her in the court case, and I imagine that would be exactly the same case for this man. But this is again this whole thing. If you don't sign up, it doesn't matter how you behave, doesn't matter what you do, nothing illegal. If you don't have the correct views, or let's face it, as a lot of people in their offices and in their workplaces and in public have to sort of pretend to sign up to the correct views, then basically you're persona non grata, you're a bad person. But as you say, they don't seem to be concerned about certain other children, and it completely depends who you're worried about and who you're not worried about. And again, he at no point in that Facebook post was calling for violence. He was categorically saying not violence. You organise meetings, go to your council. And it was about illegal migrants, because at the time, that was what people on the internet thought was happening. And I'm sorry, that was a not unreasonable expectation, given the spate of violence we have seen by illegal migrants or legal migrants or the children of legal migrants. If you look down the list of horrific terror attacks, and it looked like a terror attack at the time, and again, they found rice in an Al-Qaeda manual, but we're supposed to believe it wasn't a terror attack. Give me a break. I think it was not an unreasonable thing for him to have thought at the time. No wonder a jury found him not guilty, and so quickly. But I mean, this is it. You mentioned the grooming gangs. I mean, Kemi Badenoch and Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, they are right now unveiling their alternative grooming gangs inquiry, which focuses on, well, among the things, the religion and ethnicity of the attackers. And basically, we know that Keir Starmer, well, a year ago, he was saying that anyone who wanted a national inquiry into grooming gangs was far right. Literally jumping on a far right bandwagon, he said. And then he got dragged kicking and screaming into it, thanks to some Elon Musk tweets pointing out a lot of stuff, and reality check for everybody. And then 6 months on, there's been this big falling out. Some other survivors disagreeing with what they want to do. Who's going to run it? It can't. They say they don't want it to be a former police officer or a former senior social worker. They were the people who allowed it to happen to them and failed to investigate. And there's a very strong argument for that. But nothing's happened. I mean, nothing. They want to kick this into the long grass. The last thing they want is this inquiry to report while Labour is still in power, because we know perfectly well it's going to implicate a lot of Labour people. This was largely happening. It's happened everywhere, but particularly happened in areas that were Labour. Why? Because an awful lot of areas that have high numbers of Pakistani heritage men who are doing this are Labour voting areas. There's a demographic and a voting issue here. They want it to go away. Kemi Badenoch says, look, this is our proposed remit, and they are very clear. They want it to be a judge-led inquiry, and that, limit it to like 2 years. It doesn't have to go on for 10 years. It doesn't have to cost billions of pounds. And they're right, aren't they?
Absolutely, categorically, 100% right. This is one of those things where it ain't that complicated. It really isn't. We've done this for a while. We know how to set up inquiries, and yet it just seems that, oh, there's a problem every week. Oh, we're going to have to delay it another week, another week, another week. They are dragging their feet, and we all know why, which is this government is in hock to two groups of people. Far-left Labour MPs that joined Labour under Jeremy Corbyn, and, I'm afraid to say it, parts of the British Pakistani community that have pretty unpleasant views. And we know that because they are electing people who have similarly unpleasant views, and the Labour Party
are open about it.
And the particularities of the demographics that the Labour Party needs in order to cling on to power for as long as humanly possible mean that this country's political process has, in essence, been hijacked by these two groups who are not representative of this country, that are calling the shots in our country. And the great shame is many of these girls are getting older and older and older, and will have to wait longer and longer for justice, for longer and longer for a sense of closure, for longer and longer for them to be able to be backed up by their own government.
Not just that. No, not just that. It's carrying on right now. They may be arresting some of these guys. It's carrying on right now. And by the way, hi Sadiq Khan, it is happening in London, because it'd be really weird if for some reason everyone just went, oh, M25, no, we don't grooming gang in there. We're happy to do it in 50 other towns and cities around the country, but nope, not in London. Give me a break. It's happening. There are girls right now being gang raped by men twice their age, being drugged and taken from their care homes or taken from their schools. It's happening right now. And if you're not going to try and tackle that and get to the bottom of it, I mean, again, they're saying they're tackling it in terms of the number of people they're arresting. They haven't touched the sides of it. And by the way, these men are not getting enough time behind bars. They're being done for sort of having raped someone repeatedly for 10 years, and they're getting sort of 14 years behind bars. They serve half of that. I mean, you go to prison for life. Yeah. Bye-bye, come out in a coffin.
Yeah, and by the way, many of them are foreign nationals or dual nationals. Yep. I'm sorry.
Bye-bye.
I don't want them in this country. I don't want to be paying for their food and board in prison. I want them out of here. I want them gone.
No, I want them to serve time in prison. I disagree on this one. They're not.
No. But
as long as Pakistan are going to put them in prison, that's fine.
Pakistan needs to put them in prison.
And if they won't agree to do that, I'm sorry. I'm with Trump on this one. You get people coming from countries where you've got an ongoing issue in terms of higher rates of criminality. No one is saying everybody who comes from any country. Well, no, people from Pakistan who've complete law-abiding, contributing members of society. That's not the point. When you have some countries which have a higher rate of being a problem than other countries, and there are some clear countries like that, and Pakistan is very much on that list. I'm with Trump. We're just going to stop. We're just going to stop it. And if you won't take your people back, who are a problem, no one gets in. We're just going to have to be stricter about this. I don't think that's unreasonable. I don't think it's racist. I don't think it's xenophobic. I think it's a reasonable thing to protect the
Julia, we're still handing them millions of pounds in foreign aid. We're still buying all of their products.
Nuclear weapons.
The idea that we don't have levers over these, what are, to all intents and purposes, basket case countries, and I'm sorry, Pakistan is a basket case country.
It's the reason why people want to come here.
The idea that we cannot get them to do what we want to do on these basic levels is for the birds. These people are delighted. They laugh at how naive we are, because they have convinced us that we owe them some great colonial debt. Well, I'm sorry, we don't. We don't owe these people nothing. They can take back their own criminals. They can put them in prison, because I tell you what, they have the good sense not to allow paedophiles to wander the streets, something I wish our own government would have.
Well, I have to say, I mean, again, we need to stop importing people in the first place. I mean, there's a very big issue on that front in terms of being very much more choosy about that. We're seeing certainly illegal migrant arrivals on the boats, the lorries, and those who've overstayed visas and suddenly discover at the end of their student visa that they are indeed unable to return home. That these people are being, basically supposedly vetted, producing all this evidence, but they're not even getting a face-to-face interview. So I mean, how can anyone even know that's the right person who's? I mean, I'm sorry, we have asylum judges who are allowing people to stay on the most spurious grounds. We've got men who are coming in with receding hairlines and wrinkles and beards, claiming they're 15 years old, and people go, oh, OK, fair enough. I mean, this is an absolute joke. We're talking about people who are already wanted criminals in Europe who are allowed to stay here. People like the migrants, among the migrants who were planted in the Question Time audience. By Question Time, who are we kidding? The BBC producers would have done that. Well, is it Mentorn who produced it? Some guy, he's been rejected by 5 different countries in Europe, but he just went asylum shopping, and he finally found a country that was mug enough to take him in. I mean, this is an absolute joke, but the idea that someone doesn't even actually have to meet up with someone in person because the Home Office staff are all still working from home. Oh, I'm sorry, am I interrupting you walking your dog on the beach? But I mean, seriously, it's an absolute joke. No wonder these people are here. 0, 0, 0 is the number of migrants that we should be taking for asylum claims in this country. I'm sorry, we have you're at a 0 now.
We have a backlog of hundreds of thousands of people who abused our generosity, waltzed into this country, stole their place at the front of the queue. I'm sorry to the other people that perhaps had a more legitimate claim, but these people have come, they have stolen your place, and until we have dealt with the backlog of tens of thousands of them, we cannot take another, and they are not migrants.
I would take this as someone who has been fighting, a political, an MP or something fighting against, the Afghanistan, Taliban regime. someone who's like part of an opposition party against Putin or something. I think we should offer refuge to those people because they are trying to fight to improve their country.
They're not coming from France,
but they're not coming from France, exactly, and that's the key thing. But it's this idea that people go, well, Eritrea or Sudan, there's civil war. Yeah, that's awful, but it's what we're supposed to take the entire population? Well, most of these people are going to the local countries. Well, yeah. So why do we need to? What's uniquely special about these young men that we need to take them rather than them staying in the neighbouring countries? I'm sorry you live in an area that's a basket case. I'm sorry about that. Maybe you should try and fight to improve your own country rather than coming to our country and expecting us to take you all in. I'm sorry, that's just not how I think the world works. When it was in the sort of low thousands or tens of thousands, so people had a particular duty of care to, we had, like people from in Hong Kong, we had a duty of care. They were joint British passport holders. I'm sorry, they get to come here. That's the deal. That is very different from countries which we have no link, not even a colonial link. And even if we did, sorry guys, it was a long time ago. You had time to sort yourselves out. Most of the countries people are coming from are basket cases because they don't have a proper rule of law. They've got civil war. They've got kleptocratic leaders. And because, good people don't stay and fight.
And I'm sorry, in the nicest possible way, in the overwhelming majority of these countries, actually, the situation there now is pretty much as good as this has ever been. They now have access to phones, they've got access to more money, which is how they're getting to be over in the UK, and they have sanitation and connection. There has always been war in this world. I'm sorry that there is war in this world. I wish that there wasn't. There has always been suffering in this world. I'm sorry. I wish that there wasn't. But it is not our responsibility in this country to go and fix every little solution problem that exists around the world. And you certainly don't go about doing that by importing all of the people from those countries over to here. And by the way, the people we get half the time are the sources of the problem. The best example is the literal commander of the Al-Shabaab terrorist movement in Somalia came from the UK. How did he arrive in the UK as a refugee? Well, he'd been in Sweden first, and he said the Swedes were persecuting him over his desire to genitally mutilate his own daughter. Yeah. So we got him, put him in a mosque over here, where he preached to a load of people who turned out to be terrorists. Surprise,
one killed Lee Rigby.
One killed Lee Rigby. And he's now back in Somalia, where he's causing the problems that mean we need to take even more Somalians.
Yeah, brilliant. I mean, it's a great system. I mean, I tell you what, if you could put these people working for good, they'd be great at working in industry, wouldn't they? Is it any wonder then that America over the weekend released their national security strategy, basically saying that Europe is facing civilizational erasure? Why is this an issue for the Americans? Because basically they say things like free speech, borders, our culture, our identity is basically eroding, and crucially, European nations will become majority non-European within only a few decades, and pointing out, very crucially, that this would mean that we are no longer going to be a reliable ally. Why not? Well, as we said, we've been talking about MPs for Gaza and the like, people having completely different values in terms of doing things. Now, I've got a very big issue with Trump over his treatment of Ukraine, although that said, maybe the Europeans need to stop whinging and to stop building some munitions factories, right? Put your money where your mouth is and get on with it so we can defend Europe, which we should have always been able to do. Trump has been right about that since 2016, and he's right today, although I disagree with him in terms of his stance on Ukraine overall. But it's our problem and we need to deal with it. But Americans are quite right to say, look, we are facing civilizational erasure, and we're doing it with open arms, saying, come on in. And the British people, the Americans, the French and the Germans and the Swedes and the Italians and the Spanish and all the people who are going, are you sure this is a good idea to bring in millions of people from foreign countries with completely alien cultures and beliefs who are basically setting up home in these countries and not assimilating, not in any way taking on the culture of the country they've come to, but keeping their own cultures. Is this a good idea, they're asking? And everyone shouts bigot and racist at them. And then in about 20 years' time, we are not going to recognise our country because our laws are going to change. Blasphemy law by the back door, we've already got, effectively. In terms of, I'm thinking rights of women, gay people, freedom of speech, fundamental things are going to be gone.
Newsflash, it is not the Human Rights Act, it is not our DEI policies, it is not woke judges that make the UK a valuable ally to the United States and indeed the rest of the Western world. It is the shared culture, history, values of the British people that have, broadly speaking, developed gradually over 1,000 years. We came up with great ideas, a great system. How do we know that? We literally changed the world. The Industrial Revolution started here. Everything we've done has been brilliant. And when you change the people, and that can happen in the aggregate or dramatically. And by the way, hundreds of thousands of Brits are now leaving every year. When you change the demographics, you change the country, you change the values, and that, not Putin. And I do say that, actually, that, not Putin, is the biggest risk to Europe.
I completely agree with you. We've brought it on ourselves, and it's very interesting, isn't it? We talked about the two-child benefit cap that the government has said they're going to get rid of against the views of the British people. Nearly 350,000 foreign-born families could get extra handouts, particularly Pakistani, Bangladeshi, Nigerian and Somalian. Almost 200,000 of those households come from just 10 countries. So basically a third of households in this country with 3 or more children are foreign born, and they're going to be the biggest beneficiaries of the two-child benefit cap being scrapped. I mean,
I'm shocked by that. I'm so surprised.
I wrote about this the other week. I mean, these numbers are extraordinary. This is from Nick Timothy. He used to work in the Home Office with Theresa May. He was Chief of Staff to when she was Prime Minister. He knows his stuff. This is it, and he's basically saying you have to link settlement rights to a person's tax and welfare record. Don't let people who come here temporarily then stay on if they're costing us more in benefits. Because again, you want to have 4 kids, 6 kids, that's up to you. Brilliant. Let's more people having kids. Brilliant. But if you can't afford to look after them, then no. But there we are. Old-fashioned day. 11:24 is the time. Going to take a quick break. Going to get to your calls. Basically, a lot of you want to talk about free speech, but also the attacks on Nigel Farage. Not just a playground bully, racist allegations from what happened with his school days some 50 years ago, but also now claims about his electoral expenses in Clacton in 24. That's coming up next. This is Talk.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, this is Talk, the home of common sense. Thank you so much for joining me. In a few minutes' time, I'm going to talk to Michael Crick. He wrote a biography of Nigel Farage. What does he make of all the latest allegations against him? And we'll talk to Lord Young, Toby Young, of course, who was the founder of the Free Speech Union, about right-wingers being branded a danger to children, to all intents and purposes. That's all coming up. First up, let's get to your calls. 0344 499 1000. You know the number to call. Ken is in Cardiganshire. Very good morning to you, Ken.
Good morning, Julia. God, doesn't it make you sick, eh?
That's a fair summary of the day. You want to talk about this free speech issue? Yeah.
Several words spring to mind: Bob Villain, Kneecap, and the National Trust. Just a few of them. You know, why were they never prosecuted?
Yeah.
Why do the left wing think they're the only political persuasion in town?
Yeah.
Why are we not allowed to have right wing views?
Yeah, indeed. I mean, point out, Kneecap were prosecuted, but they was on some weird technicality. It fell down. But you're right. But this is the thing. There just seems to be, it only seems to happen in one direction. And even in the cases where we've seen, you know, after what happened in Southport, some people who were sort of, should we say, on the other side of the debate did get prosecuted. They got different terms. They were allowed out on bail. They got charged with lesser offences, even when they were on camera calling for people to go and kill people. I mean, come on. The rules are different.
I mean, you know, kill the IDF, or death to the IDF and all the IDF, I should say. But, but then you've got the National Trust who are trying to indoctrinate us into the fact that we were all colonisers and slave traders.
Yeah.
And if you say anything against them, you get banned. You know, this type of thing, it just goes on everywhere.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why we are not allowed to have a... You know, because we're right-wing, we've all got to be friends of Hitler.
Yeah, well, exactly. I have to say, I mean, that's the other thing. Is genuinely, I don't even think that, you know, a lot of the views that people have spoken about, far right, I don't even think of myself as right-wing. I just think we talk about these centrist dads. Centrist dads hold completely left-wing views. You know what I mean? I think that you and we are probably moderate, middle ground, ordinary voters.
I've got a confession to make. I lived in Germany for 13 years, and never once did I go and look for Hitler's grave, I must admit.
Well done you, Ken, is all I can say. But, I mean, no, but genuinely, that's the thing. That is the thing. It is absolutely mad. Ken, thank you for that. I feel your pain. Phil is on the line in Hertfordshire. We kept him waiting. Thank you so much for taking the call to call you back. Phil, you want to talk about where we are with Nigel Farage, don't you?
Yeah, good morning, Julia and Sam. I really think what we're witnessing is a government and opposition probably in freefall. They're clasping at straws. They are desperate. And I honestly don't believe that it's going to make the slightest difference to anybody that's going to vote reform. Still vote. That's
interesting. Well, what's interesting is that those allegations about racism in the playground school from against Nigel Farage, they've been around since 2013. They were around before the last election, so they're not just suddenly coming out of the blue. And the allegations about electoral expenses being, basically a criminal offence, being of election fraud, basically spending too much on the local campaign and not declaring it. That comes from a former Reform councillor who worked on the campaign, so that's not from Labour.
I know, but obviously there's some sort of bad feeling there, isn't there? You know, if there was nothing attached to it, it might have a little bit more credibility.
Mr. Disgruntled, they're saying, basically.
Yeah, Mr. Disgruntled, yeah. I mean, and Julia, people that live in greenhouses shouldn't throw stones. You know, I'm sure if people want to start to dig in, look at Labour, look at Conservatives, there's plenty that could be sort of uncovered. I'm sure there is.
We've got absolutely numerous cases that
exactly.
I mean, ones that have been proven in court and the like. I mean, that's the thing. They are going to throw everything at Farage. Do you think that any of this matters? Do you think it will change the views of anybody, or will it indeed harden people's views?
Absolutely, it's going to harden. In fact, I don't think there's any room in the coffin to put any more nails. They need another coffin now.
None of it ever seems to work. They can't work it out, because for them always they're sort of, but this one allegation alone would completely end his career. But then, Angela Rayner cannot pay the stamp duty she's due to pay, and people are going, she can come back as party leader.
They all sit in a little room, all making each other feel good. And, yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's going to work.
Yeah.
And they're just sort of trying to comfort each other.
Yeah.
They're done for.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think we can safely say, I mean, when, let's face it, especially with Keir Starmer, when his own think tank that backed him, Labour Together, actually starting basically going shopping for another leader, I think that might be the beginning of the end. Phil, thank you so much. Really appreciate your call. We're going to take another quick break. We're going to talk to the journalist and broadcaster Michael Crick. He's also the author of a biography of Nigel Farage. He's the one who originally broke in the media those allegations that there were some racist slurs in the playground by Nigel Farage, by his schoolmates claimed. But does he think he's a racist? And what does he make of the election fraud claims? That's all coming up. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. It's coming up to 11:35. This is Talk, the home of common sense. Coming up, we're going to be talking to Lord Young, the founder of the Free Speech Union, about, well, are right-wingers being branded a danger to children simply for expressing their views? We'll talk about that coming up very soon. First up, though, let's talk about where we are with Nigel Farage. A barrage of allegations against him in recent weeks. Let's talk to someone who, well, knows an awful lot about those allegations. Michael Crick is a journalist and broadcaster and also author of the book One Party After Another, The Disruptive Life of Nigel Farage. A very good morning to you, Michael.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for joining us. And of course, a lot of the allegations about sort of the racism allegations, the anti-Semitic slurs and the singing of Hitler songs that have been breaking in the news in the last few weeks, those were included, many of those, in your book about Nigel Farage. You followed him around, spent a lot of time talking to former school classmates and the like. I suppose my first question to you is, do you think that Nigel Farage did say some of those things? Because we've got classmates, a lot of them saying he did. A lot of other classmates say he didn't. What is your judgment on that?
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that he did. The number of people who themselves were victims of these, slurs is too mild a word. It was racist, anti-Semitic bullying.
Yeah. Go back to where you're from. Hitler was right. Gas the Jews.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the latest one, Yinka Bankole, who came out on Friday, Saturday, talking about. I mean, he was 9 at the time, and Farage was 16, 17, and he talks about how Farage said, Africa's over there, go back there, and sort of waited for him at the school gates. I mean, in a way, the bullying is worse than the racism.
Well,
I think.
I mean, this
and that is part of his character that we definitely still exists to this day.
Okay.
It's complicated. I definitely think there are so many witnesses now, I mean, the number that it's up to is getting on for 30. It was about somewhere about 15 at the time I wrote the book. And what's also happened is that people I spoke to who wouldn't go on the record have now done so.
Okay. So it's a number of people who are making allegations, and people say no smoke without fire. What about the claim that, look, a lot of this is people who have an axe to grind? They're big Remainers. They're very much on the left. They're people who don't like Nigel Farage. Do you think that's a fair defence?
Not really. I mean, you would expect people to go to a private school in South London, Dulwich area, to be more Remain than Brexit. That's how the votes went in 2016 in this.
Yeah, but we're talking about something that happened, 40 years before then.
Oh, well, of course we are. So that what I say is I don't think you can say it's politically motivated.
Okay.
I mean, some of these people had to be really persuaded to come out and say what they did. Inevitably, in a group of 29 people, some are going to have political connections, but it's very few.
Okay. When Nigel Farage hit back on Friday in a press conference, basically at the BBC, and going, well, come on, it was a different time. Ain't Half Hot Mum, the black and white minstrel show, you know what. You and I are old enough and ugly enough. We remember it was a very, very different time then. He's only a few years older than me now. I don't remember, certainly at my school, but I went to a comp, so maybe it was different from nasty public schools in London at the time. That was something that was an issue. Certainly wasn't. I certainly remember it being an issue at my school, but. It was a nastier time. Racism was much more blatant and open, and lots of black and Asian children who came to this country with their parents recall having slurs shouted at them in the street. Is there any way that the defence can be? Because let's face it, Nigel Farage hasn't said it never happened. He hasn't said that.
His lawyer has.
His lawyer, but Nigel Farage seems to say he doesn't. He's kind of circumvented. Is there a defence that he may or may not have said some of the nastier things? He may have been a bit of a nasty little piece of work, may have been a bully, but some of the things he said were not unusual for playgrounds at that time in the late 70s and early 80s, and in particular in public schools where, frankly, everyone seems to be horrible to everybody. Is that in any way a defence?
Well, I went to a very similar school to Nigel Farage. In fact, they looked the same, Manchester Grammar School. And for a start, I don't think there's a playground at Dulwich. There certainly wasn't at that Manchester Grammar School. And people never said anything like this. Partly, I think, at MGS, there were a lot of Jewish boys, and the number of Jewish boys at Dulwich was very few. But to say, I mean, it's not just against Jewish boys, it's against Asian boys, it's against black boys, and it's really nasty. It's not just one word, it's persistent, it's bullying, it's ambushing, it's waiting for them to come out. And these people, some of them, people like Peter Ateji and Yinka Bankole, have remember this. It's scarred really in their minds. And it's the bullying aspect, which I think is also significant. And I think it's fair to say that Farage is still a bully. That's how he operates.
Well, certainly we've had people who've left his various parties over the years who do claim that. I mean, some could say some bully, some might say a strong leader who knows what has to be done and doesn't suffer fools. I mean, again, people might have different views on this, and I'm not defending him on that. Here's the thing. My guess is that Nigel Farage did say some rotten things, and he wasn't a very nice person as a teenager. Does that tell us anything about the man he is now? Because I know you've been asked many times, do you believe that Nigel Farage is a racist? And you have said, no, you don't think he is. I've certainly never heard him in private ever say anything, even in drink, anything that I would have any questions about. And I would absolutely say so if I had heard him say that. Do you think he's a racist now? Do you think these allegations of what he did or did not say or did not do when he was, 11 years old or even 17-year-old has a bearing on the man he is now at 60?
Well, when I wrote the book, I thought it would be a good idea to ask everybody I could, many of whom had fallen out with Farage, because, as you say, he falls out with lots of people, and to ask them if they'd ever heard him, while he was an adult, say anything that was racist. And there's only one example, and that's from Alan Sked, who was the founder member of UKIP, the party that Farage later led. And he remembered Farage from the sort of early 90s. So what are we talking about? 32. So around about the age of 30, coming out with a very racist comment, which nobody else can corroborate or heard, but Sked is very firm about it. That's the only example. And on that basis, given that these are Farage's enemies, they threw all sorts of other stuff at him, but not that one.
Yeah.
And I don't think he's anti-Semitic. You know, he's very pro-Israel. He's not anti-Semitic today.
Yeah.
However, there are other gradations of other forms of race. For instance, pandering to racism. Is some of his platform and his program and the way he operates, is he deliberately seeking the votes of racists? Is he embarrassed to have the votes of racists?
But he's gone out
Has he
of
ever
his
repudiated?
But he's gone out of his way, has he not? You know, no time for the Tommy Robinsons, no time. Some of the people he's got rid of from UKIP, from the Brexit Party, from the Reform, have been people over racism allegations. That he gives very short shrift to this stuff.
Well, there's a lot in that, and you're broadly right. He after all finally left UKIP. It's a complicated story in 2018 because the then leader of UKIP was getting too close to Tommy Robinson, and he thought that was wrong.
But this is the thing.
And he then set up the Brexit Party, which then became Reform.
Let's talk about how much does this damage things, because a lot of our audience, a lot of people will say, look, you know what, they're just throwing the kitchen sink at Nigel Farage. They're going to keep coming back with allegations. I mean, they tried the whole, he's a public school boy, he likes a pint. I mean, like, you know, people literally we couldn't care less. They tried that about Boris Johnson and David Cameron. Didn't work with them either. But this allegation, latest now, we've got the latest, which is actually from it would appear to be a disgruntled former Reform councillor, claiming that there was electoral fraud in Clacton. Now we know, look, again, the kitchen sink has been thrown at Nigel Farage at the 7 elections where he stood for Parliament and didn't get in. The parties did everything they could to stop him getting elected. But he's now accused of falsely reporting local campaign expenses in Clacton at the July 24 election. A former Reform councillor, member of the campaign team, Richard Everett, he said he submitted the documents to Met Police, claiming he shows there was an overspend on the local campaign. Is this? I mean, look, he's Reform. He's not from another party. But is there basically a concerted effort now that Nigel Farage is riding high in the polls? He's considered a serious threat to not just Labour, but to the Tories as well. That everything is going to be thrown at him, and will any of it stick?
Well, I think as Farage is somebody who could well become Prime Minister in the next few years, all journalists have a duty to examine his past and examine his character. And I've always said that about all politicians, and I've spent a lot of time doing it. On the specifics of this one about election expenses, which is another of my areas of expertise, I was involved in the investigation that led, ironically, to the convictions following of Conservatives after the campaign which they won against Nigel Farage back in South Thanet in 2015. Yep. Now, on this particular case, the problem with these allegations in terms of them sticking is that the time is up. You've got a year to actually put them in and try and overturn the results. So it's difficult to see how a conviction in terms of electoral law could come out of this, although there may be other laws involving perhaps fraud or making a false statement. And in any case, Mr. Everett, the gentleman making the allegations, the former Reform councillor, still a councillor, but not in Reform, he has said that Farage was blissfully unaware of all this.
So I'm not entirely sure how much...
You're not going to convict Farage very easily on those allegations. You may convict other people involved in the campaign, for instance, the agent.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Look, I would love to speak to you again about this. Really interesting to get your thoughts. Michael Crick, journalist and broadcaster, author of that book, One Party After Another, The Disruptive Life of Nigel Farage. Sam Armstrong is still with me. Now, of course, you're a Conservative, you're not a Reform voter. Look, there's no doubt at all, look, everything is being thrown at Nigel Farage. Do you think any of this will actually, in any way, damage Reform's chances? Does it just those voters who are not the diehards, but the sort of, oh, shall I switch my vote from the Tories or maybe Labour in a red wall seat? Will that make any difference?
Look, I adopt a general view, which is I don't care about what people did as children, and I don't hold it against them. But do you know what? Even if there are issues and bits, if you're looking for a perfect politician,
good luck.
It doesn't exist. They don't exist. Everyone's got flaws. Everyone's got a few problems, and the question we've got to answer ourselves and the British public is, who is the right person to save this country from the ruin it faces? And I'll give a warning to the left. They threw the kitchen sink and some at Donald Trump last year, and it didn't work. He was elected with more votes than he got the time before, won the popular vote, won a sweeping majority of the Electoral College. And I predict the same won't work.
And again, the same thing a lot of people are saying, like I say, like, I think he's absolutely a proven, I mean, through his own words, Donald Trump is a sexual pest, you say I grab women by their private parts without their permission, and you admit that. There have been numerous cases, numerous allegations. Do I think he's faithful to his wives? No. I mean, again, not a question. Do I think he is racist? Yes, I think there's some very clear evidence in his past as a property developer. Yeah. But the point is, the American public didn't go, oh, we think he's perfect, we don't believe any of it. The American public went, we don't care if he's going to deal with the economy, if he's going to deal with illegal immigration, if he's going to deal with the mad culture war stuff. We don't care whether he's a nice person or not. And that's the thing the left don't get. You have been they don't get it. You are so bad, people don't care. By the way, just going to get you up to date. Tim Westwood, the former BBC DJ, he has appeared in court today. He's pleaded not guilty to 15 charges. 4 of those are for counts of rape. He has pleaded not guilty to all those charges. Right now, we have actually just got current sentencing of Joey Barton, of course, the former footballer and commentator. He's being sentenced after being convicted of various posts on social media about Jeremy Vine, BBC presenter, and others along the way. And the judge has said that some of those posts were racially aggravated against some people involved in those posts. Waiting to find out his sentencing, but that's certainly not looking good. If he does believe they were racially aggravated, that would suggest a stronger sentence. Are we going to be another free speech question about his... he claimed he was just a free speecher, but did he go too far? Well, we're going to find out what the judge thinks when it comes to his sentencing. Up next, going to talk to the founder of the Free Speech Union, Toby Young, now Lord Young. He's up next. This is Talk.
We haven't seen a police while I've been here, and I've been here for a little while now.
The last few weeks have been incredibly tough on my family so
across the UK on DAB Plus.
Very, very good morning. Welcome back to the show. Thank you very much indeed for your company. Just some breaking news for you. Former footballer, of course, a well-known political and football pundit, Joey Barton, has just been sentenced to 6 months behind bars, suspended for 18 months for sending 6 grossly offensive social media posts. He was sentenced at Liverpool Crown Court. Some of those posts were about Jeremy Vine, the BBC presenter, accusing him of basically being interested in children, completely falsely. Other of those claims were, the judge said, racially aggravated against others. Very interesting that. Let's talk to Lord Young now. He's a Conservative peer and founder of the Free Speech Union, about various free speech issues. But Lord Young, thank you so much for joining us. Obviously, I know you've not covered this case in specifics, but are you concerned about someone being sentenced, even if it's to a suspended sentence, 6 months in custody for social media posts?
Yes, I don't think that Jerry Barton should have received such a severe sentence. The Free Speech Union has been for some time campaigning for the repeal of Section 127 of the Communications Act and the Malicious Communications Act. I don't think people should be sent to jail for saying offensive things on social media. I mean,
you'd expect, say, for instance, his comments about Jeremy Vine, the BBC presenter, that's an easy libel case, surely, rather than being sent to jail.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have a right not to be called essentially a paedophile falsely on social media, I think.
Well, I mean, I don't know all the details of this case, but I understand the phrase that Jerry Barton used was not intended to be taken literally. It was an insult, a kind of almost humorous insult, rather than something that was intended to be taken at face value.
Well, it rhymes with Ponce. Bike Ponce. Have you been on Epstein Island? Are you going to be on those flights logs? Might as well own up now, because I'd phone the police if I saw you near a primary school on your bike. It's fairly clear cut, isn't it?
I don't know. To me, that the court evidently thought so.
Yeah, I mean, he was convicted. Yeah.
But to my mind, that sounds like just ranting insult humour rather than allegations that are intended to be taken at face value.
It does, and yeah, it's a very difficult balance, isn't it? It is a very difficult balance. Where are you? And I imagine, judging that you were involved very much the Free Speech Union with helping Jamie Michael, a former Royal Marine, being banned from working with children after he protested in a video on Facebook against illegal migrants, but again, not calling for violence, being very categorically clear. Organise local meetings, talk to your council, go to your politicians and the like. But he said, some migrants were scumbags and psychopaths. This is in the wake of the Southport attack, which at the time people thought was an illegal migrant due to stuff on the internet. It was incorrect. It was not an illegal migrant. But the case got dismissed by a jury in 17 minutes, and yet he's still not allowed to coach his daughter's football team because apparently there are safeguarding issues.
Yeah, this is, I think, Julia, a clear-cut case of safeguarding procedures being abused to punish someone whose views the panel, in this case the panel of the Welsh Football Association, whose views they disapprove of.
Yeah.
Nothing he said was unlawful, and that was we know that because a jury, as you say, acquitted him of the charge of stirring up racial hatred in just 17 minutes. That jury was sending a message to the Crown Prosecution Service. This is a ridiculous, absurd case that should never have come to court. We tried to make that argument. We paid for Jamie's defence. We tried to make that argument to the CPS beforehand. Drop this charge. There's nothing here. This is a ridiculous waste of everybody's time. They refused. They persisted in charging him. I think in the case of when someone is charged with stirring up racial hatred, the Attorney General of the United Kingdom has to sign off on that charge. So presumably Lord Hermer thought this was worth pursuing. Yeah. Jury said, no, on your bikes. Dismissed it in 17 minutes.
I mean, that's literally walking into the jury room, taking off your coats, having a vote and walking straight out again, isn't it? They didn't even have time to have a second cup of tea.
Yeah, there was clearly not much disagreement among the jurors as to Jamie's innocence. But having been found innocent, having been put through this ghastly ordeal, refused bail at one stage, the FA still decided to punish him nevertheless and say, no, you can no longer teach your daughter's football team. You can no longer work with these other teams in your community.
And he's a good bloke. This is, I mean, this is the thing. We want dads. You know, he's got 2 kids. We want dads to get involved, giving up his own time, volunteering. We want people to be doing this and getting kids out doing sport and being a good role model as a former Royal Marine as well. It is extraordinary. Welsh FA, they want to safeguard these girls. It's interesting, but not that bothered about letting boys play against girls when they claim to be girls who can cause them physical injury. So they're not that worried about safeguarding over the years, are they?
No, they've been pretty negligent on that issue. I think the FA has now said that biological males cannot compete against women in women's football. It's taken them a long time to reach that position, and they've only come to that conclusion seemingly quite reluctantly after the Supreme Court judgment about the meaning of sex in the Equality Act. But this is one of over a dozen cases, Julia, we have at the Free Speech Union of people who are being punished, penalised in this kind of way for safeguarding reasons, when actually they don't pose any risk to children. They're not paedophiles. They're not abusive parents. They just have, robust right-wing views. And
have quite similar views to probably the majority of people in this country. But this comes back to, when, Brexiteers, when UKIP supporters were being told they couldn't foster or adopt children. This is idea. If you don't have the correct views, on the left, then you are somehow a risk. And as this man has said to you, the worst thing is, people say, well, why aren't you coach the team? I'm not allowed to. Safeguarding issues. You don't want people to think that you're a danger to children. That's the worst thing you could possibly accuse a man of.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a real smear, a horrible thing to have hanging around your head. People in his community will assume that there is a good reason, no smoke without fire, that he's been told he's a safeguarding risk to children, when all it means in this context is that he's anti-illegal immigration, which does not make him a risk to children.
I'd have thought all of us should be anti-illegal immigration. I would have thought that was a pretty solid view that most people should hold.
You would have thought so. And there are echoes here, Julia, of the way in which the Online Safety Act is used to make it harder for people to access supposedly right-wing content. So when the age gating was first enforced by Ofcom in July, whereby if material wasn't suitable for audiences of all ages, you had to prove you were 18 in order to be able to access it. Some of the material which was age-gated by the large social media platforms included someone going on an anti-immigration protest in Leeds. It included Katie Lamb reading out transcripts.
I mean, literally an MP speaking in Parliament. I'm going to have to leave it there. You can hear the music. Always so good to talk to you, Lord Young, founder of the Free Speech Union. Thank you very much. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. Very much appreciate you joining me. 2 minutes past 12 is the time. This is Talk. We are the home of common sense. Whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, thank you so much for your company. Coming up in this hour, we're going to be talking more about, well, right-wingers being banned from working with children for, well, just their views, not having all the correct views. Former Royal Marine Jamie Michael banned from working with even his own daughter's football team he was coaching after he'd protested on a Facebook video against illegal migrants in the wake of the Southport attack. But he labelled some migrants scumbags in a video. Again, some migrants, yeah, and some British people are scumbags too, I think it's fairly safe to say. But he was charged with an offence, basically inciting racial hatred online. A jury cleared him in just 17 minutes, but the local safeguarding board say he's not suitable to work with youngsters, including his own child, which seems wrong, does it not? We're also going to be talking about Joey Barton, the former footballer who's been sentenced to 6 months, a suspended prison sentence for posting grossly offensive social media messages about female football commentators and also the BBC presenter Jeremy Vine. We're also going to be talking about Prince Harry winning full security risk assessment following a major about turn by the Home Office. Remember this long legal case he's had basically against his father's own government about whether or not he could have armed basic security whenever he is in the country. We're going to talk about the latest on Ukraine as well, with President Volodymyr Zelensky holding talks in London today with Keir Starmer, the French President, and the German Chancellor as well. This is all over the latest peace plan, as we've had Donald Trump saying basically he's a little disappointed in Zelensky because basically he won't sign up to this absurd plan for so-called peace, i.e. surrender to Russia. All that coming up. Want to hear your thoughts on everything? Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text us on 87222. Get in touch on X at talkTV. Calls are charged at the national rate. Text costs £1. Standard network rate message. Big thanks to you for joining us. Big thanks also to commentator Sam Armstrong joining us throughout the show. A very, very good afternoon to you again.
Good afternoon.
Let's go back and talk about the former footballer Joey Barton. But you work with the Free Speech Union, You're also with the Conservatives. But Toby Young is the founder of the Free Speech Union. He said he's very uncomfortable with Joey Barton being given a 6-month suspended sentence over what were regarded as grossly offensive social media messages. He had been found guilty of 6 counts of sending electronic communication, i.e. posts on X, with intent to cause distress or anxiety. Got a 6-month prison sentence in the last 20 minutes or so, suspended for 18 months. These were posts he sent to football pundits, Eni Aluko and Lucy Ward. Eni Aluko is black, and there was a racially aggravated offence according to the judge in the sentencing, and also posts to the broadcaster Jeremy Vine. Now the posts to Jeremy Vine basically were abusive ones, basically suggesting that he had a sexual interest in children. Completely false allegations. Now, the prosecution argued that Barton, who's got 2.5 million followers on X, he said, may well be characterised as cutting, caustic, controversial and forthright. He said, everyone is entitled to express views that are all of those things. What someone is not entitled to do is to post communications electronically that are, applying those standards, beyond the pale of what is tolerable in society. Now, do you think that he should have been found guilty? Do you think that I don't like intent to cause distress or anxiety. It's very subjective, that. But he compared the 2 female football pundits as the Fred and Rose West of football commentary. I ain't got a problem with that. That's quite funny, frankly. But he also tweeted Aluko that she was in the Joseph Stalin Pol Pot category, murdered hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of football fans. I don't think you can take that literally. But he also said, only there to tick boxes. DEI is a total load of beep. Affirmative action, all off the back of the BLM George Floyd nonsense. Again, I don't have a problem with him tweeting that. He referred to Vine as basically, if you've been on Epstein Island, blah, 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 I'd phone the police if I saw you near a primary school on your bike. And these are nasty, vicious messages Should he have been prosecuted? Should he have been found guilty? And should he have been sentenced to 6 months suspended sentence?
I think it's an absolute disgrace. I mean, that was a courtroom full of barristers paid for by the taxpayer. There was a police investigation, prosecutors at CPS HQ. You had a senior judge there passing sentence, all just arguing about nonsense, which frankly should be up to people to just form their own views about Joey Barton. I dare say that Joey Barton and I don't have all that much in common. It might be that he wouldn't be my chosen person to spend an evening with. But do I think that at penalty of imprisonment, and he has got a custodial sentence, that yes, it's been suspended, but...
He's going to have to be a good boy on social media.
And I think that's the message they're trying to send, that how on earth is anybody going through life supposed to navigate what is and is not tolerable in society according to whatever the CPS decide this week?
Is this stuff that should have been a libel case? It should have been a civil case.
Well,
so if you want to go around falsely calling people basically having a sexual interest in kids, then I'm afraid you're going to have to pay the penalty for it financially. Because I'm sorry, if someone said that of me, I would absolutely want to sue them.
What?
I'm sorry, I'm not an absolutist when it comes to free speech.
I mean, absolutely. If someone says Jeremy Vine is a paedophile, then Jeremy Vine should be able to bring...
Which he is clearly not, by the way.
Jeremy Vine should be able to take them to the cleaners. But if he's posting his caustic, and as you say, frankly, slightly funny tweets about his view on other football commentators.
His views on the female commentators, I'm sorry, I think there are an awful lot of people, a lot of pundits, who are not remotely racist or sexist, who are of the view that there are a lot of people now on television because they tick boxes. You can literally look at some people and listen to their commentary and know that if they were a white man, they wouldn't have that job because they're not actually as good as... There's a whole array of men who would have got, been up for those jobs. I'm sorry, I'm trying to be careful how I say it. There is no doubt you've got BBC, ITV's kind of thing. They do have a thing where they go, we need to have a woman, we need to have someone of colour. They do actually tick boxes. Now, some of those people are very, very good. Yep. But some of those people aren't very good. Same as some of the white men aren't very good. But as a general rule, there's more competition for some of those roles.
Look, so people...
Let's be honest.
People tweet along commentary on social media about our show every single week. Some of them are quite mean about me. Some of them are slightly funny in the way they're mean. Some of them are just plain mean. Some of them point out things that I can't get past, and it really, really annoys me. But
get a thicker skin.
Never have I ever considered, even in my wildest dreams, phoning the police and trying to send the police around to criminalise them for doing it. Thanks for watching. I take on board your criticism and keep watching because that's how it pays our wages.
I love it when people who watch and listen to my show for years will still send me those, and it just makes me laugh. There's another button. I'd rather you stayed, but carry on getting angry. Right, really interesting to hear. Love to hear your thoughts on that sentence and on that conviction. Of course, we already had the conviction, but give us a call 0344 499 1000. Right, let's go to our guest at the top of this hour, Alex Wilson. He's a Reform UK London Assembly member, friend of the show. Very good afternoon to you, Alex.
Good afternoon, Julia. Good to be with you.
Thank you very much for doing this. Now, I know you haven't had a chance to look at that case, so I'm not going to be cruel to you and ask you about a criminal case that has only just been resolved. But I do want to talk to you about the case involving Jamie Michael, the former Royal Marine, banned from working with children after he protested against illegal migrants in the wake of Southport. He went to court. He basically got let off by the jury within 17 minutes. Tells you they thought it was a load of nonsense. He's still now apparently regarded as unsafe to work with children by the Welsh Football Association because of these allegations that he has got a problem with. Well, he says he's got a problem with illegal migrants. We should all have a problem with illegal migrants, should we? Should he be stopped from working with his daughter's football team?
It's ridiculous. You're right. We should all have a problem with illegal migrants, and he's no exception. Thank goodness he had the option of a jury trial, though. Obviously, if David Lammy got his way, then things could have turned out very differently indeed, and tried by a judge, and off you go. So thank goodness for that. But reading the story this morning and hearing about it, and hearing your chat with Lord Young before the news and the break earlier on, it's staggering, absolutely staggering. It seems that if you have views that the establishment regard as being a bit fruity, a bit too right of centre, then you're on the naughty step, and it's not just naughty. I mean, that's a ridiculous way of describing it. It's actually having a serious impact on people's lives because, as Toby said, if you're accused of being unsafe around children. That's a terrible thing to have hanging around you, and people will interpret that in all sorts of ways that it was just absolutely
well. And Jamie
absurd.
Michael has said, because he said, he just can't have it hanging over him. People will think that they think there's, well, they would have had his computer when he had the Facebook post, wink, wink, and this is the worst thing you can be accused of.
And that's, I guess, why he had to go public to explain it and put his side of the story. And thank goodness for organisations like the Free Speech Union who are standing up for people. So thank goodness he had the opportunity of a jury trial, which acquitted him in 17 minutes. And thank goodness for your show as well. Again, being able to talk about these issues and put this right.
We do try and talk about this stuff. Can we also talk about your party leader? A lot of pressure on Nigel Farage at the moment. We've had all these allegations from previous classmates, kids at his school back in the late 70s, early 80s, accusing him of making wildly sort of anti-Semitic and racist saying things, singing pro-Hitler songs. He hasn't come out with a 100%. It never happened. I'm going to sue everybody who said this. He's basically saying, look, he doesn't remember a lot of things and it was a different time. He came out fighting on Friday, attacking the BBC. I think understandably, it was a very different time then. But do you think these allegations of racist and anti-Semitic, other, anti-Semitic and bullying remarks are actually going to damage your party?
Excuse me. We know we're in for a long slog between now and the election, and all sorts of allegations are going to be thrown at us from all sorts of angles, and this is one of them. But at the heart of the story here, it's something that allegedly happened almost 50 years ago. He was at school. Look, we all did silly things when we were at school. I know I certainly did.
Did you sing pro-Hitler songs at school?
No, I didn't sing. No, but look, it's a nonsense story. Let's focus on the here and now. What really matters, Julia, what matters is, as a party, we are absolutely resolute behind Israel's right to defend herself, fully supportive of Britain's Jewish community. I've been working very closely with Jewish organisations in London, on issues like the pro-Palestinian hate marches. I went to, we took a party delegation to Israel just a few weeks ago. We met with members of the Knesset, people in the foreign ministry, and very, very encouraged about the movement.
Are you basically saying, look, it may or may not have happened, but that was the boy, this is the man, and it's not an issue now. But do you think it's going to damage the party and damage him?
Well, people will make allegations, and the people that are cheering them on, so the BBC and the Guardian, obviously would hope that it does cause some damage. But Nigel's got a thick skin. You've got to have a thick skin to be in politics, and sometimes you have to brush these things off. But I say, focus on the here and now. What we're doing as a party, building up towards those next elections. Yes, we're in a few people's crosshairs, but fundamentally we've got a job to do, and we need to focus on that, very much so.
What about the electoral fraud allegations? These don't come from the Guardian, or the BBC. These come from a former, a councillor still, but a former Reform councillor who worked on Nigel Farage's campaign in Clacton back in 2024. And he claims, and he's reported to the Met Police, that there were falsified election expenses. He says, interestingly, that Nigel Farage was blissfully unaware, although legally he's the one who signs off the election expenses. But basically, he claims there was an overspend on the local campaign, which is a limit of £20,000, and some of that expenses should have been on the national campaign, and therefore there was electoral fraud. Now, there's only a year's statute of limitations on those allegations, so whether or not anything could actually be brought. But do you think that is going to damage the party or Nigel Farage?
Well, I've been both a candidate and election agent more times than I would like to remember, and I know exactly how difficult it can be to
it's a complicated business, to be fair.
It is. But as even the complainant has said, Nigel wouldn't have been aware or implicated in the details of this at all. For these purposes, a candidate is merely a legal necessity. They don't actually get involved in the nitty-gritty of running the campaign and doing the paperwork. That's the role of the election agent. It seems to me quite a coincidence that this complaint has only come out just after the election agent, the guy who was Nigel's election agent, has just been selected as the candidate for the Greater Essex mayoral election, which of course has been cancelled. Another story altogether. Yep. And I think this has got more to do with the falling out between the two gentlemen involved, and that's why this complaint has come to light now. But look, as far as I'm concerned, nothing to do with Nigel. He will be in the clear. The complaint's been made. may or may not be investigated. You're right. There is generally a year's limit in order to bring these complaints. I think the timing is just ever so slightly suspicious.
What about the legal action, which we're told that the Nigel Farage and others are planning to, in the Reform Party, to bring against the government's decision announced last week that they were going to basically, cancel and delay by another 2 years elections across huge swathes of South East England, Norfolk, Suffolk, East Sussex, Essex, a huge swathe, the whole of the South East basically. Millions of voters not getting a chance to vote for these new unitary authorities. Lots of those elections cancelled last year, cancelled earlier for this year, because on the basis of, there's no point electing anybody who's just going to be out of office when these new unitary authorities start within a year, so we'll delay it. But now they're saying it's going to take ages for them to all do this organisation, so they're going to go 3 years without being able to elect their local representatives. Legal action against that, how is that going to work?
Well, my understanding is that we're looking at pursuing a judicial review. So we've got lawyers advising us, and we'll see what they say. And if there's a credible chance of a victory, then yes, we should absolutely push for it, because this is a disgrace. There's a word for people who cancel elections: dictator, and that's how Keir Starmer is behaving. And it's very clear why he's chosen those particular ones to cancel. It's because he knows that Labour are not going to win, and it's highly likely that in all 4 of those mayoral contests, which are looking like they're now being postponed, it's Reform that's in the front line to win those. As it was with the council elections that were cancelled this year, a lot of these, it's covering the same area. And it's because they're scared of Reform. It's purely political. It's very, very obvious that's the case. And it's quite frankly disgraceful. And I'm going to use that word again: dictator. Keir Starmer is a dictator.
It is extraordinary. No one can honestly say that if Labour were on track to win those elections, that they would have been delayed again. But also, again, my view is very much, if these councils are going to take basically 3 years to get themselves organised, maybe we should get rid of all of those officials, because they're clearly utterly, utterly incompetent.
Yeah, let's have a clean sweep, and let's get Reform councillors in to sort it out.
Let's talk about utter incompetency at the Home Office, because we are seeing, an extraordinary situation where we have not only a situation where it would appear huge numbers of people have been granted asylum after arriving here illegally, or then swapping from their student visa to say, suddenly I can't go home, being granted the right to stay here, without ever meeting anyone in person, without ever actually having anything other than just a paperwork submitted, not even a phone call or a Zoom, let alone an actual in-person meeting. Should anyone be granted the right to stay here without an in-person meeting?
Wow. Absolutely not. It's ridiculous. And it's the same with claims for benefits and PIP and all that kind of stuff. There needs to be a face-to-face element involved in making those decisions, because it's big decisions, a huge amount of taxpayers' money at stake here. And to make those decisions purely based on a paper trail, which you don't know that person themselves has actually filled in that paper, who's coached them to do it, who knows? No, absolutely disgraceful. If you're making a decision to give someone the right to reside here, and all the benefits and pluses that entails, then there needs to be a proper interview, assessment, face-to-face.
It does seem extraordinary.
I can't believe we're even asking this as a question. It's insane.
Well, it does seem extraordinary, but I can remember when my husband and I were getting married, we already owned a home together and had a child together. Don't tell my mum, she didn't realise. And we went to the local registry office, and because there'd been a spate, I think, of people, basically people marrying people for their British passport, we both turned up with British passports, resident, in London, with a child. And we were asked questions in separate rooms about each other. I did not know my husband-to-be's mobile number. Genuinely, I put it in my phone when we met. I'm hopeless remembering telephone numbers. I have to read the number for this show every single time. And I didn't. And they would go, "How do you know?" And I went, "Oh my God, I'm not marrying him for a British passport. I've got a British passport." Seems to me I had more questions for me to marry as a British citizen, my British citizen husband, with whom I already owned a home and had a child, than people are being asked to get a right to live here, which seems to be utterly bizarre. And again, that was required in person. What do you make of Nick Timothy? He's the former Home Office advisor and also, of course, Chief of Staff to Theresa May during her ill-fated premiership. But he's very, very sensible on the immigration issue. He's a Tory MP now. And he says that ministers should consider withholding permanent residency from migrants who could draw more in welfare payments than they contribute. Now, he's pointed out that nearly 350,000 foreign-born families will get extra handouts under the decision to scrap the 2-child benefit cap in the budget last month. A third of households with 3 or more kids are foreign-born, and they're obviously going to be eligible for that. But by definition, they're already on universal credit. They're already not paying their way, and we're going to give them more money. And yet those people will still be eligible to have permanent settlement rights. Would that happen under a reform government?
He's absolutely right. I mean, Nick Timothy, he's one of the good guys still in the Conservative Party, and and on issues like this, he talks an awful lot of sense. He talks an awful lot of sense on the proposed Islamophobia definition as well. So, no, I completely agree with everything you've just read from what he said. And no, we wouldn't be handing out extra handouts to foreign-born residents because ultimately the British taxpayer should be there to support other British folk, and this system is not doing that. It's a broken system. It needs change, and no party necessarily has a monopoly on good ideas. So I'll look very carefully at what Nick Timothy has said and take that on board as well. I'm sure.
Very interesting. Alex Wilson, Reform UK London Assembly member. Thank you. Always good to talk to you. Thanks so much. Sam Armstrong's still with me in the studio. Just ask you about that because it is. I mean, we've had battles for so many years. I've been writing about this stuff since about 2000 about the benefits of mass migration and the cost of mass migration. And we've always been told, there's this economic benefit, and it's been absolutely categorically proven that depending on where people are from, largely the people we are getting from, you mentioned, basket cases countries in the third world, they're not a financial benefit to this country. They're a massive financial drain. But this is a clear stat. And I've been saying, I don't want British-born families. Your family could have been here since 1066. I don't care. I don't think you should get extra money for having extra kids after the first two. But nearly 350,000 foreign-born families could get extra handouts. 200,000 of those households come from 10 countries specifically, starting with Pakistan, Bangladesh, Nigeria and Somalia. We've got people coming from countries where having a big family is the norm. Yeah, fine, that's great. Coming here, doing low-paid work, often, particularly in Pakistan, from Pakistani and Bangladeshis, very high unemployment. The mums tend to be staying at home, often don't speak English, that's why they can't get a job. That's been well documented in various different reports under different governments, and therefore what a surprise! They can't afford to live on just one person's low-paid salary, and they need to be supported by everybody else. And now they're going to get more money. Let's remember the sum: $3.5 grand a year per child until those children are out of full-time education. I'm sorry, this is madness.
What cheeses me off is everybody in this country that I speak to, certainly come from the part of the world that I'm from, which is in Essex, has known this for a very, very, very long time. They've known it. They've seen it. You cannot possibly be a contributor to this country if you're living in that kind of situation that you set out.
Yeah.
And yet, for years and years, they have been told on the television, in the newspapers, by their own government, no, that's nonsense. Actually, we've done the stats, and
not even that it's okay, but it's happening, but that it's not happening.
It's not true.
It's called gaslighting, isn't it?
There has been a national gaslighting of the entirety of the British public, and it has been perpetrated by the government, by politicians, and also by journalists.
Oh, yes.
That sneer and look down at people for saying something which turns out to be true, and yet...
Which we all knew was true.
And yet we were made to feel guilty.
But by the way, these are the
it.
same people who think there isn't a single person who's unemployed or claiming incapacity benefit or sickness benefit, particularly for mental health reasons, or even physical, who doesn't want to work. They say, but people say they want to work. Yeah, of course they do. I mean, come on.
It just makes me sick.
Are these people, are they stupid or are they malign?
I think they are malign because it makes me sick that people have been, as I say, made to feel guilty, made to feel shameful. And you get it in your own families that people just sit there and they think this stuff to themselves, but they feel like they can't vocalise it. And it is, in my view, akin to a slightly abusive relationship in which people feel something, but they can't say it, they can't speak.
But no, again, I don't think people are feeling it. It's like I don't feel that men can't become women and things like that. You know what I mean? I know it to be true. I don't have any views that when I think, I'm wondering this, I look up the stats. I go to official, Commons documents, Home Office, there's loads of stuff in the stats. When they say, most poor are working poor, again, they're not. You just have to look at the official statistics. I don't make it up. And if they are working, they're working part-time. They ain't working full-time. They ain't doing overtime like everyone else does when they're trying to, but you take extra shifts, right, when you're desperate to try and make ends meet. No, not these people. They'll get some universal credit. We've got a problem with our own homegrown people. We've got a problem with immigrants who arrived here legally. We've got problems here with people who are illegally here as well. We have to deal with all of it. But telling everyone who claims there's a problem, nope, not happening. No, you're just a bad person for thinking it or saying it, ain't going to solve anything. They all come round to it in the end, when the facts slap them in the face at an election. But telling the British people for years that something that they know to be true isn't true, it's not working out too well for these parties.
No, it's not. But what I would say is it does take years to disprove all of these lies and to get into the data. And the left rely, I think, on just throwing out so many of these different claims and charges, saying them so emphatically that there are lots and lots of people, many of whom work here, work at newspapers and other places, that it's a full-time occupation for them to shoot down the lies that are used to, as you say, gaslight the public.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Going to get your calls up next. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
I think they're talking the talk, and at least the Home Secretary is recognising the problem, but many of her backbenchers won't agree. And in my area in welfare, we're seeing something similar where Keir Starmer, Rachel Reeves, have talked about the need to reform welfare, but when they tried to make some welfare savings back in the summer, their backbenchers voted against it. They can talk all they like it's
they can talk about what they want, but your party had 14 years to reform welfare, and the welfare bill spiralled out of control. Universal credit was cut off at the knees by George Osborne.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Afternoon, welcome back to the show. 12:31 is the time. Just a reminder that Jerry Barton, the footballing pundit, has been sentenced to a 6-month suspended sentence for what the judge called grossly offensive tweets on X social media to various different people, including two football pundits, Eni Aluko and Lucy Ward, and along with also the broadcaster Jeremy Vine. Love to hear your thoughts on that. 0344 499 1000. That's the number to call. Lots of you getting in touch about, in particular, other free speech speech issues, particularly in relation to the former Royal Marine Jamie Michael banned from working with kids over safeguarding concerns, simply because of his views that are perfectly legal because he hasn't been convicted of any crime. Let's talk to Mark about that. He's in Sheffield. Hi, Mark.
Julie, how are you?
Very well indeed, sir. What do you want to say?
Basically, all this safeguarding issue about Jamie, he served his country, he's wearing his medals with pride, he's come back, and now he's serving his community.
Yep. I feel safer with Jamie around, frankly.
I do, actually, and to be honest, I'm a veteran as well, and I'm looking at it in this way. Who's thinking about his frame of mind and how he is safeguarding, how he's been treated? He's been put on remand for something that a Labour MP found as hurty words. When are these Labour MPs and these people calling us out with hurty words, when are they going to get seen to and looked after with
a lot of people pointing out that Wes Streeting has written some absolutely shocking things in the past. 2009. Correct. We're literally talking about wanting to throw a male columnist, Jen Moore, shoved the bigoted old bag under a train. Some really, like not unusual messages. Wanting to smash the former Ofsted chief Chris Woodhead around the back with a baseball bat. I mean, put it this way: if Nigel Farage wrote that, he'd be in court.
Yeah. What about Ricky Jones when what were the things he said?
Yeah. The councillor. Yeah.
Yeah. And what about these people? I just feel so sorry for Jamie because he's come back after serving his country back to a land where he thought was going to be safe for himself and his family, and now he's being persecuted for something that he thinks or. Yeah. You know, he's not even said anything derogatory. It's nothing that most people aren't thinking.
This is it, and that's the thing. It's what most people think. And again, he wasn't inciting violence. He was saying about get together. Go to your council, go to politicians. He was categoric, but he wasn't calling for violence against people.
Correct, Julie. He said peacefully.
Peacefully.
Gather peacefully. And I just don't get why someone with such high regard in the community is being treated like this. And
absolutely,
I just want people to check in on him and make sure he's all right mentally.
Very, very good point. Well, I know the Free Speech Union are looking after him. I mean, Sam Armstrong, Jamie Michael, you've been working with Free Speech Union. Is he doing okay?
Well, Jamie's got PTSD from after his time in the army, so these kind of things do hit him harder. So we are checking in with him every day. Good. I think we might be seeing him on talkTV a little bit later today.
I think he's on Ian Collins' show. I just want to know why it's not on my show. There we are. Anyway, let's go to another call. Let's go to Stuart, who's in Wigan. Hi, Stuart. What do you want to talk about?
Well, first of all, I just want to say that I'm totally and utterly 100% behind your last caller.
Yeah.
What they've done to our veteran is absolutely disgusting. After everything Labour's done, covering up rape gangs and, the rape and this and the other, it is absolutely disgusting. They've got Labour politicians and everything else calling for the death, basically, of anybody that's far right in their eyes.
And again, sorry, Darren, we'll keep. There's a bit of background noise there. Sorry, it cut out for a second. But this is it, far right in their eyes. I mean, but we're all far right in their eyes. I mean, that's the thing. Anyone who isn't completely woke lefty, full on Starmer fan club, they think is far right.
Yeah, but I mean, on the other point with Nigel Farage. Yeah. It's just rubbish. I mean, I was born in 1968, so I'm 57.
Oh, same as me.
Right? And don't get me wrong, I've never been loved by everybody, because I'm way too upfront about saying exactly what I think, when I think it. And if it upsets someone, it upsets them. I really don't care.
Yep.
But it's just absolute. I mean, I'm going back to when I was a kid.
Yeah.
If people didn't get offended. You didn't get offended when you were a kid. If somebody said something to you and you didn't like it, you give them a crack.
But then, wait a minute. Look, I think things were better. People didn't report kids to police, things like that. However, the allegations against Nigel Farage, I mean, again, you can say, look, it doesn't matter what someone did in their early teens or even late teens compared to what someone is like as a 6-year-old. I think people have been very clear they don't care. But I think the young boys who were, they claim, racially abused, I think they did take offence and it stuck with them for life. And some 30 people have come forward now.
It's funny though now, when it's coming out about Nigel Farage, that it's racial abuse. Mm-hmm. It's not racial abuse when you've got Islamic whatever walking down the street shouting for the death of all of them. That's not racist of you.
Yeah, no, that's a very fair point. The pro-Palestinian so-called march, their hate marches, calling for the death of, and again, someone death to the IDF. Given that there's conscription in Israel, you're basically calling for the death of every person in Israel, aren't you?
Yeah. Plus the fact that you know what I mean. I really don't care what he said when he was a kid.
Yeah.
I mean, like I said, I've upset a lot of people in my time. You know what I mean? As far as I'm concerned, they deserved upsetting. You know what I mean? Because I was speaking my truth, and that was it. You know what I mean? If they want to,
I love that. Speaking my truth. I like that. Take the woke language and use it against them. Stuart, thank you for that. Appreciate that call. Is another 1968er. Coming up, we're going to take a very quick break. Then we're going to be talking to the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies, about Prince Harry apparently winning a review, a bit of a volte-face by the Home Office on whether or not he can actually get armed security every time he's here in the UK. Oh, goody. Does that mean Harry's going to be bringing Meghan next time? This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon, welcome back to the show. Thank you very much indeed for joining us. Let's talk about Prince Harry. He has apparently won, unprecedented review from the Home Office into his security when he comes to the UK, depending on what he's doing. If he's attending a coronation or a funeral, does he get the armed security that he says he needs? What about if he's on a private visit? Is he worried, as he's always claimed in the court cases, basically against his, HM government, that actually can't bring his wife and children to this country because he cannot have armed or guaranteed armed security and feels unsafe. So let's talk about this right now with a man who knows all about Royal Protection. He's the former head of Royal Protection, Di Davies. Good afternoon to you.
Hello, good afternoon.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. So, first of all, do you think that Prince Harry does need armed protection, regardless of whether the Home Office? Do you think, in your experience, that he needs that protection?
Great answer, no.
Why not?
Unless the intelligence and information has changed, he does not require it, because the number of occasions in this country since 1974, any of the armed officers who had to pull out their gun, to my knowledge, is zero. So in other words, all the others have managed perfectly well for over 50-odd years, 60 years, without any of their officers, some of them are armed, of course, pulling out those guns. So it's an absolute nonsense to say that he requires it on this particular occasion.
But isn't the knowledge that someone, that a public figure has got armed officers, that makes them safer in itself from attack, because he does have two. A, he's very high profile. He is the son of the king. He was the grandson of the late Queen. But also B, very crucially, he fought in Afghanistan. He's also written in his memoirs, I think most veterans have said very unwisely about the number of kills he had. Does that not make him a specific target?
No, I don't think it makes him specific any more than a number of others. Generals, SAS people, you name it. There are so many people who you could say may require some kind of protection. Now, again, for somebody who wants protection, he keeps a very high profile. I always advise then and now, if you want protection in any shape or form, keep a low profile.
Oh, but you can't. If you're Prince Harry, I mean, I'd like them both to go away and shut up and have that private life they promised us they wanted when they went for Megxit. But to a certain extent, he can't be that private. He turns up in the country, it's on the front page of the newspapers.
Well, with great respect, yes, he can, and sometimes does, without you knowing it and I knowing it. But he can and does, and again, there's a fallacy to say that he's totally unprotected.
Yeah.
He gets, firstly, a liaison officer. If he gives 30 days notice, then they will review the event. They will look at where he's going, what the likelihood of any kind of attack is. But I say again, it is so rare, and others, including Uncle Andrew now, has no protection.
Yeah.
He's arguably high profile too. He served in the Balkans. I could go on and on.
Yeah.
A number of the royals now, what we used to regard as senior, and in my day we protected 22 of them full-time. Now that has been reduced. Now somebody much wiser than I made that decision, rightly or wrongly. But again, we go back to him. He gets protection, did get protection from the Metropolitan Police the last time he was here in September. For whatever reason, they deemed it appropriate. And I think it's sensible. Look at the event, look what he's doing. Is it private? Is it for his father, the king? And then decide the appropriate level. That's what I would do.
Right. No, that's very interesting. I've always, it's one of the funny things that I've got very little time for Harry or Meghan, but what I've always thought was because he did fight for his country and it wasn't his choice to be born a royal prince, that actually his security and security of his family seemed to me to be a reasonable thing that we would just have to cover. That said, I find it extraordinary that for years Nigel Farage and other prominent politicians on the right have needed security, and that's not being provided by the state, even though there were clear threats. I just worry, it's one of those things where it's all perfectly safe until it isn't. And we seem to very rarely have any ability to. I mean, I know that the authorities do foil a lot of attacks, but they don't foil every terror attack. They don't foil every criminal act. That he is too high a target, and the knowledge that he hasn't got armed guards means that he is more at risk.
Well, if he has a liaison officer, and if that liaison officer is with him, he may well be armed. And again, those surrounding him, both in America, I presume they are armed, but here they're all ex-royalty protection officers. A number of them are. Certainly the team leaders are. And they have the requisite knowledge and ability. But I say again, you've got to look at history, learn the lessons of history. And what I'm trying to say to all of you is the fact that the number of occasions you have to draw a firearm as a protection officer in the last 50 years is zilch.
Yeah.
So we've got a sense of proportion. When we can't afford X, Y, and Z for pensioners and all the rest of it, I don't want this multimillionaire to get the kind of protection which I would give to Nigel on the state, because I think personally he's doing a good job most of the time, and then I'd give it to him, and I'd give it to anyone else. We protect former prime ministers like Liz Truss. They get full-time protection. Tony Blair gets it. Huge amount, probably more than the king. So we've got to have a sense of proportion based on knowledge, advice, and history. And I'm saying if I was in charge, he wouldn't get it unless somebody could show me he really required it. I say again, keep a low profile, come to this country quietly, succinctly, don't open your window and wave at people in an armoured car. Etc. I could go on I could go on and on it, but we've got to have common sense here, which unfortunately is sadly lacking in those in authority in this country at the moment.
Does appear to be the case. Di Davis, so good to talk to you. Thank you, former head of Royal Protection. Appreciate that. Sam Armstrong, what do you make of this? Because I hold no candle for these people, but I've always thought they feel they need, not if they are at risk, and he's clearly at risk. But Di Davis, he knows his stuff. He knows it.
Yeah, and actually, I think there is a broader point, which is that, and I'm sorry for putting it this highly, but I think Harry turned his back on his country. He decided, despite being born into a life of extraordinary privilege and being given a job in life, which was to be
I wouldn't wish being a royal on my worst enemy.
Do you know what? Nor would I, but look at what the late Queen did. Look at the life of service that she displayed. She didn't choose it.
He was the spare. No, I've got very little time for it. I'm just saying. I don't care what he does. He could be completely useless, and has turned out to be fairly. But at the end of the day, he fought for the country. He wasn't just sitting around. He wasn't being a playboy. And I'm sorry.
And then his job,
I think they need to know he's safe. Di Davis reckons he is safe. So.
And then his job was to go out and serve the country in precisely the way that the royal family have served this country for a very long time. He turned his back on it.
Yeah.
For him to now turn around and say that I should subsidise his security arrangements.
No, he's actually said he'd be happy to pay for it.
Okay, for him to turn around and say that Metropolitan Police officers should put themselves in danger, which he says is there, to go around looking after him, I think is wrong. Do you know what? If you're born a royal, there's good sides, there's bad sides, but I expect you to do your duty.
I think it'd be really nice if you're allowed to choose your own job that you want to do. You're not basically told you have to do. I again wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. 12:47 is the time. My only big worry is if he does get the security, he's going to bring Meghan back, isn't he? He's going to bring her back with the kids. We might get to see the kids' faces. You never know. I'll live without it.
Well, it would be nice for the king if that happens, of course.
I do think it's absolutely true. You've got the same with Meghan. Their kids basically don't know their grandparents on one side of the family.
One of them is dying in a hospital. I think it's disgraceful. I think it's deplorable. But these people, generally, Harry and Meghan, believe that they appeared out of nowhere. They're totally individual people. You're part of a family.
I've got no time for this, like withholding your children from from the grandparents. Very absolutely bizarre. Anyway, 12:47 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Then we're going to be talking about President Zelensky. He, along with Macron and the German Chancellor, are in the UK right now having talks about, that peace plan that is a surrender plan from the US. We'll find out what's going to happen next. This is Talk.
This is from the migrant camps in Dunkirk.
It's a lot deeper and darker.
The French police are complicit every step of the way.
And that was when I heard the gunfire. You need to get out of there quick. They do not care about human life. They are dangerous people.
For 2 weeks, Talk was undercover in those camps. This is an absolute scandal.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:51 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Let's talk right now about what is going on in terms of Ukraine. President Zelensky is in London today, along with talks not just the Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, but also the leaders of France and Germany. Certainly, Friedrich Merz, the German Chancellor, has just arrived at number 10. Their plan for peace in Ukraine is what they're talking about. Of course, it's a plan for surrender to Russia, according to, well, what the Americans seem to want. Let's talk about it with Elliot Wilson. He's a military writer and senior fellow for national security at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. I finally finished saying your job title. Elliot, thanks for joining us.
Delighted, thank you.
Appreciate you taking the time. Is there any hope that something will come out of this? Because it seems to me every single day I'm reporting on talks between these various different leaders or representatives of Donald Trump or European leaders in various different parts of the country or the world, but nothing seems to be moving on. Are we getting anywhere?
I think the problem with today's meeting is that European countries on their own don't have the leverage to bring this to a conclusion. Yeah. And Donald Trump the American administration, how much Donald Trump's input is debatable, has put forward this peace plan, which is essentially giving Russia most of its demands. Donald Trump says that the Russians are delighted with it. Well, they would be, wouldn't they? I mean, if you give a kidnapper everything going to be pleased. Absolutely, yes. And the European nations tried to mitigate it slightly, but it's still a deal which is going to be very difficult for the Ukrainians to accept, and rightly so, because it means giving away a fifth of their country and a bit more, actually, to the people who invaded.
And giving, the original document asking them to give away land which Russia hasn't even conquered, which seems to be utterly, utterly absurd. Donald Trump said overnight that he was disappointed in Zelensky, that he'd not read the latest version of the peace plan. I find that rather unlikely, that Zelensky has not pored over every single letter of these things, and wouldn't be wanting to see everything. Oh, by the way, just live footage we've got of those who are watching. Emmanuel Macron has turned up for his bromance loving with Keir Starmer as well. But we have got this particular situation where you seem to basically have the Europeans on the side of Zelensky, i.e. on the side of the country that's been invaded by the hostile enemy state, desperately trying to sort of slowly convince Donald Trump round to their way of thinking. And it seems to me you've got the Secretary of State of the US, Marco Rubio, and others basically trying to sort of slowly push Trump that way as well. And yet you've got, every time Donald Trump has a phone call with Vladimir Putin or a meeting with him, or every time Steve Witkoff, his envoy, has a meeting with him, we're back to square one again. And the answer is always Ukraine has to surrender to the Russians.
I think the problem with Donald Trump is twofold. Firstly, I don't think he has a sort of vague preference for Vladimir Putin over Vladimir Zelensky. That's clear on a personal basis. And he also has the problem of, like a cushion, he bears the imprint of the last person who sat on him. So whoever has spoken to him most recently will be uppermost in his mind. I think essentially he's not really very concerned about the details of how this conflict comes to an end. He just wants it to end so he can say he's brokered a deal. Yeah. But clearly, how it ends is absolutely vital. And whether it ends with no prospect of it resuming is the critical thing. Yeah. And without security guarantees, there's no way we can say that the Russians won't observe a ceasefire and then start the invasion again. And
it does seem interesting with NATO Secretary General, who's obviously got a very good rapport with Donald Trump, and we understand Keir Starmer and Macron do as well. But everyone's just constantly saying, "Oh, Donald Trump's right. He's bringing peace. He's the great guy." But they actually completely fundamentally disagree with what he wants to do, because they do understand the realities of the threat from Russia. But at the end of the day, this all comes down to Donald Trump being right way back when, 2016, in his first term of office, when he said, European countries weren't paying their way. They were relying on the Americans for their defence. At the end of the day, maybe the Europeans need to stop whinging and moaning and kowtowing to Donald Trump and basically build some munition factories, build some more, jets, get with the programme and start making sure that we're able to defend Ukraine, because Ukraine is on our doorstep and it's not on America's. And frankly, they don't care that much.
It's certainly true that for decades, the European nations very much underspent on defence, on the knowledge that America would be the backstop. Yeah. That's starting to change. It's changing very slowly. Yeah. Germany is spending a lot of money. We are not spending nearly as much as we sort of give the impression. spending. And the French, of course, are deadlocked in political terms because they can't get a budget through the National Assembly. So there are some problems. There's some progress. But yes, at the moment, we don't have the capabilities or the capacity to make a difference on the ground. We can't put very many troops into Ukraine, even if the Russians were willing to accept that, which we know they're not. And, there are basic things like, reconnaissance and intelligence and air-to-air refueling logistics that we can't provide as European countries, which only the Americans can provide to sustain any kind of deal. So it's hard to see exactly what we can do, and yet we're still talking about ourselves as if we can implement some kind of just and sustainable peace, which I think is not helpful.
No, absolutely. It all ties in also with this the latest national security strategy, which they're basically saying that Europe is facing civilizational erasure. They're talking about mass immigration, downgrading of the sort of the Western civilizational culture because of the woke leadership out of touch with the mainstream, but also pointing out, look, this is an issue for America because they need us to be a reliable ally, and they don't think we will be in the future. That's going to be a concern for a lot of people.
It is. I mean, there is a distinct irony about Donald Trump talking about people not being reliable allies, but there is certainly a move in America to draw from, very overseas commitments to implement really the Monroe Doctrine and concentrate on its own hemisphere. And that does mean that Europe is going to have to look after European security, which is not unreasonable in itself, no matter how it's been framed by America's national security strategy. But that requires investment, and we've got to spend money, and we're being very slow to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Elliot Wilson, I so appreciate you joining us, military writer, a senior fellow at the Coalition for Global Prosperity. Sam Armstrong, we were talking earlier about this document, this American document, but again, we're in the situation. So many, the European leaders just constantly praise Donald Trump while they're working desperately behind the scenes, going, how on earth are we going to get this guy to stop being in Putin's pocket?
Well, do you know what, actually, I've slightly hardened my view on this. I don't really agree. I don't think Donald Trump is the problem. I think the problem is Europe, who have neglected grotesquely all of their duties. And even now, Europe could step in and choose to spend a lot of money to buy from. If they went to Donald Trump tomorrow and said, all of these munitions, can we buy them and send them to Ukraine?
That is what we're doing at the moment.
If they wanted to up the scale to help Ukraine, Trump would bite their hand off. They're not. And what's more, German energy consumers are still paying for this war through Russian gas. This war has been...
They're funding both sides of the war,
They are
which
funding
is insane.
both sides of the war and not funding the Ukrainians properly. I've had enough of some of the Trump bashing on it. Actually, it should have been Europe to deal with this in the first place. Our economy is 20 times what Russia is. This ought not to have been beyond us.
Well, we should have prevented it by being strong in the first place, and we should have taken much... The fact there is even a single extra sanction that can be placed almost 4 years on is madness, isn't it? Sam Armstrong, look, we could talk about Ukraine every day. We often do so much. We've covered a lot of ground today, have we not? I feel exhausted. I hope you've enjoyed a lot of the show. If you've missed anything, you can go to my YouTube page, the Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. But huge thanks